Tonight, you're about to listen to something that has been quietly shared for hundreds of years. A small collection of Zen stories passed down not to impress the mind, but to gently ease it. There are 16 stories in this journey, each one simple, each one opening a different space inside you. These are not stories you need to remember, and they are not lessons you need to understand.
They are here only to meet you exactly where you are right now. Whether your mind is still carrying the weight of today, replaying conversations, or already drifting towards sleep, there is nothing you need to change. You don't need to know anything about Zen, and you don't need to try to meditate. Simply listening is enough.
As the stories unfold, your breathing may begin to slow, your body may soften, and your thoughts may loosen on their own. So, settle in now. Let your body rest where it is, and without any effort. Allow this quiet journey to begin. In ancient Japan, long ago when the rhythm of life moved more slowly and the world felt closer to the earth, there lived a fierce samurai named Nobushiga. He was a man shaped by discipline, loyalty, and the constant presence of danger. His days were governed by duty, and his nights by vigilance. Even at rest, his body remained alert, his hand never far from the hilt of his sword. Honor was not an idea to him. It was something to be defended at every moment. One morning, as pale light filtered through mountain mist and cherry blossoms painted the hillsides in soft shades of pink and white, Nobushiga began a journey up a narrow stone path. The air was cool and quiet. Pine trees stood motionless along the trail, and the distant sound of temple bells echoed gently through the valley below. With each step, the world of battle and command slowly receded behind him. He was traveling to visit a renowned Zen master named Hakuin, a teacher known throughout the land not for his gentleness, but for his uncompromising clarity. Hakuin lived simply, without gods, without wealth, without ceremony. Yet warriors, scholars, and nobles alike sought him out, drawn by a reputation that could not be captured in words. As Nobushiga approached the monastery, his posture remained rigid, his gaze sharp. Years of training had taught him to assess every situation for threat or advantage. Even here, in the quiet of the temple grounds, his mind did not fully rest. He carried with him a question that had begun to trouble him deeply, one that no amount of strength or skill had been able to resolve. The monastery itself was modest. Weathered wood, open space, and a stillness that seemed to absorb sound rather than reflect it. Hakuin was seated inside, unmoving, his presence calm and unadorned. When the samurai entered, the contrast between them was striking. Unembodied force, readiness, and tension. The other appeared entirely at ease, as though nothing in the world required defense. Nobushiga bowed briefly, with the restrained respect of a soldier accustomed to hierarchy. He had come seeking an answer, something solid, something certain. He did not yet realize that what awaited him was not an answer at all, but a mirror. And in that mirror, he would soon glimpse the thin and fragile boundary between heaven and hell, not as distant realms, but as experiences arising within his own heart. When the old master finally opened his eyes, his gaze rested on the samurai without judgment or curiosity. There was no sign of reverence, no sign of fear, just a quiet, untroubled attention. Nobushiga straightened slightly and spoke with the directness of a man accustomed to command. He said that he had come to ask about something that troubled him deeply. He had heard many teachings about paradise and hell, about reward and punishment beyond this life. and he wanted to know the truth. Were these realms real, or were they merely stories meant to control the weak? Hakuin looked at him for a long moment, allowing the silence to stretch. Then, in a voice that seemed almost casual, he asked a simple question. "Who are you?" The samurai answered immediately, his chest lifting with pride. He said that he was a warrior, a servant of his lord, a man prepared to give his life for honor and duty. His words carried the weight of identity carefully forged over many years. At that moment, something unexpected happened. Hakuin's tone shifted. The gentleness disappeared, replaced by sharp disdain. He laughed softly and said that a man like this could not possibly be a true warrior. He mocked the samurai's appearance, calling him crude, unrefined, unworthy of respect. He questioned how any lord could trust someone who looked more like a beggar than a soldier. The words struck Nobushiga like a sudden blow. Heat rose quickly through his body. His face flushed. His breath tightened. Before thought could intervene, his hand moved toward his sword. Years of conditioning surged forward, the reflex to defend honor, to respond to insult with force. Hakuin continued, his voice calm but cutting. He spoke of the samurai's weapon, dismissing it as dull and useless, unfit to cut even the thinnest paper. The room seemed to narrow. Sound faded. The only thing that remained was the rush of anger and the pounding of blood in Nobushiga's ears. With a fierce cry, he drew his sword and raised it high above his head, fully prepared to strike. In that instant, his world contained only one truth: the need to destroy the source of humiliation standing before him. And it was precisely in that moment, when rage had taken complete hold, that Hakuin spoke again, his voice steady and unmoved. He said quietly, "Here, the gates of hell open." The words did not shout, they did not command. They arrived quietly, almost gently, yet they cut through the samurai's fury with perfect precision. "Here, the gates of hell open." In that instant, something within Nobushiga stopped. The raised sword hesitated in midair. The heat that had consumed his body began to loosen its grip, just enough for awareness to slip in. For the first time, he saw himself clearly, not as a warrior, not as a servant of honor, but as a man overtaken by his own anger. He saw how quickly his pride had been wounded, how instantly his identity had demanded defense, and how easily his mind had transformed a few words into a world of violence. The realization arrived without explanation. It did not come as a thought, but as a sudden clarity. Slowly, the samurai lowered his sword. His breath, once sharp and uneven, began to steady. The tightness in his chest softened, and the storm inside him lost its force. With trembling hands, he returned the blade to its sheath. The room felt different now, wider, quieter, as though space itself had opened where moments earlier there had been only rage. Nobushiga bowed deeply, this time without formality or restraint. The bow came not from obligation, but from recognition. He understood that the master had never insulted him in anger. The provocation had been a mirror, revealing the hell he carried within himself, ready to ignite at the slightest touch. Hakuin watched him silently. Then, in a voice filled with gentle warmth, he spoke again. "Here," he said, "the gates of paradise open." The words settled softly into the stillness. Nothing more needed to be said. The teaching had already been received. In that moment, Nobushiga learned something that could not be taught through explanation. Heaven and hell were not places waiting after death. They were experiences arising immediately, shaped by the state of one's own heart. and the boundary between them was far thinner than he had ever imagined. The Buddha once taught that holding on to anger is like grasping a hot coal with the intention of throwing it at someone else. It is always the one who holds it who is burned.
What Nobushiga saw in that moment was not a moral lesson and not a warning about behavior. He saw something much simpler and much deeper. He saw how quickly the mind creates its own suffering. Nothing outside him had truly changed. The room was the same, the teacher was the same, the words spoken were the same words.
And yet, his entire world had transformed in an instant. When anger took hold, the world became narrow, hostile, and dangerous. When awareness returned, that same world became open, calm, and gentle. Heaven and hell did not arrive from anywhere else. They arose directly from the state of his own consciousness. Zen points to this again and again, not as philosophy, but as lived experience. We often believe that other people create our suffering. Their words, their actions, their lack of respect. But Zen gently reveals that suffering does not come from what happens. It comes from how tightly we cling to the idea of who we think we are.
When that image is threatened, the mind reacts as if its survival is at stake. Nobushiga was not angry because of an insult. He was angry because his identity as a proud warrior had been challenged. The moment that identity loosened, the anger lost its foundation. Nothing needed to be fixed. Nothing needed to be forgiven.
The anger simply had nowhere left to stand. Zen does not ask us to suppress anger or pretend it does not arise. It invites us to notice it as it appears, to see it clearly without becoming it. In that seeing, the energy of anger begins to change. It no longer consumes the whole field of awareness. It becomes just another passing state, like a cloud moving through an open sky. The teaching in this story is not about becoming calm all the time. It is about recognizing how quickly the mind opens the gates of suffering when it believes its own stories. And just as quickly, those gates can close when awareness returns.
Not through effort, but through seeing. This is why Zen masters speak so little and point so directly. They are not trying to improve the mind. They are showing us that the mind, when seen clearly, naturally releases its grip. Heaven and hell are not destinations. They are movements. And in every moment, we are already choosing which one we step
into. As you rest with this story, there is no need to analyze it. You do not need to decide whether you agree with it or not. Simply notice how familiar it feels. Most of us have known moments like this. Moments when a few words or a small gesture or a simple misunderstanding suddenly changed everything inside. The body tightened. The breath shortened. The mind narrowed. And without realizing it, we stepped into our own version of hell. Perhaps it was a comment that felt dismissive. Perhaps it was being interrupted, ignored, or misunderstood.
Perhaps it was the quiet feeling of not being seen or respected. In those moments, the reaction often feels justified, automatic, unavoidable. And yet, like Nobushiga, we may later look back and wonder how something so small carried such power. Zen does not ask you to judge these reactions. It does not ask you to correct them or
push them away. It simply invites you to notice them more gently the next time they arise. To recognize the tightening in the chest, the heat in the face, the urgency of thought, not as a failure, but as a signal. A signal that a gate is opening, and, just as importantly, Zen reminds us that the same moment always contains another possibility, the possibility of pausing, of seeing what is happening before the mind fully commits to its story. In that brief pause, Something softens, the world widens, the grip loosens, and without effort, another gate opens. You do not need to remember this lesson. You do not need to apply it tomorrow. Simply letting the story settle is enough. The mind learns in quiet ways when it is allowed to rest. Even now, as you lie here listening, the body is learning what it feels like when nothing needs to be defended. As this first story comes to a close, allow it to drift away naturally. There is no need to carry it forward. Another story will arrive soon, carrying its own rhythm, its own gentle invitation. For now, simply stay with the softness that has appeared. Stay with the quiet, and let yourself be carried forward, knowing that the night is still holding you, and nothing more is required. And as this story fades, there is nothing you need to hold. The night continues quietly, and somewhere else, another story is beginning. On a hot summer day in ancient Japan, when the air shimmered with heat and the sound of cicadas filled the countryside, a weary merchant walked alone along a dusty road toward the marketplace. His pace was slow, not from hesitation, but from exhaustion. Across his broad shoulders, he carried 50 rolls of fine cotton cloth, his entire livelihood bound together with rope and balance. Each step pressed the weight more deeply into his body. These goods represented more than merchandise. They were the result of months of labor, careful planning, and quiet hope for the future. The cloth would be sold, exchanged, and transformed into food, shelter, and security for his family. As the sun climbed higher, sweat gathered on his brow, and his breath grew heavier. The road seemed longer than it had that morning. Ahead, he noticed a small roadside shelter standing alone beneath the open sky. Its wooden posts were worn smooth by time, and beneath its roof stood a large stone Buddha, carved with serene precision and softened by years of wind and rain. The statue's expression was calm, untouched by heat or effort, its presence offering shade and a sense of refuge. Relief washed over the merchant. Carefully, he lowered the heavy bundle from his shoulders and placed the cotton rolls at the feet of the Buddha. The stone beneath him was cool. The shade was deep and still. For the first time in hours, his body could rest. He leaned back, allowing his muscles to release their long-held tension. The quiet of the shelter, combined with the steady hum of insects and the rhythmic rise and fall of his breathing, slowly drew him into sleep. His eyes closed without resistance. The road disappeared. The weight lifted, not just from his shoulders, but from his mind. For a time, there was only rest. He slept deeply, trusting the shelter, trusting the calm presence of the stone figure beside him. Nothing in that moment suggested danger. Nothing hinted at loss. The world felt paused, balanced, and still, as though everything had been placed exactly where it belonged. And so the merchant slept, unaware that when he awoke, the stillness would be broken, and a simple moment of rest would turn into a mystery that no ordinary thinking could resolve. When the merchant finally stirred, the sun had begun its slow descent. The light beneath the shelter had shifted, stretching longer shadows across the ground. For a brief moment, there was only confusion, the soft haze that lingers between sleep and waking. Then awareness returned, and with it, a sudden unease. His eyes moved instinctively to the place where the cotton rolls had been resting. They were gone. At first, his mind resisted what it saw. He blinked, certain that the lingering fog of sleep was playing tricks on him. He looked again, more carefully this time. The stone Buddha remained exactly where it had been, silent and unmoving. The shelter was unchanged, but the ground at its base was empty. The rope, the bundles, the weight of his livelihood, all had vanished without a trace. A tightness formed in his chest. He stood quickly, scanning the area around him, hoping perhaps that someone had moved the goods for safekeeping. He stepped outside the shelter, circling it slowly, searching the road in both directions. The dust lay undisturbed. No voices sounded nearby. There were no signs of carts, no footprints, no hint of what had happened while he slept. The realization settled heavily. Everything he had carried, everything he depended on, had been taken. The future he had been quietly building unraveled in a single moment. His thoughts raced forward, imagining the consequences, the loss of income, the worry he would bring home, the uncertainty that now stretched ahead of him like the long road he had traveled. He felt anger rise, then fear, then a hollow disbelief. How could this have happened here? Beneath the calm gaze of the Buddha, he had rested in trust, believing that this place was safe, that nothing could go wrong in such stillness. Now that trust felt naive, almost foolish. For a long moment, he stood frozen, unsure what to do next. There was no one to accuse, no clear path to follow. The silence that had once been comforting now felt vast and indifferent. The stone Buddha offered no explanation, no reassurance, no response at all. With no other choice, the merchant gathered himself and began the long walk toward the town. Each step felt heavier than the last, though his shoulders were now empty. He carried nothing with him but loss and uncertainty, and a single question echoing quietly in his mind. How could something so valuable disappear so completely, in a place that had seemed so peaceful unbeknownst to him? The answer would come not through force or accusation, but through a kind of wisdom that moved in unexpected directions, revealing truth where no one thought to look. When the merchant reached the town, his steps led him naturally to the magistrate's court. There was nowhere else to go. With quiet humility, he explained what had happened, how he had rested beneath a roadside shelter, how his cotton rolls had vanished while he slept, and how everything he owned had disappeared without a trace. When he finished speaking, the room fell into a thoughtful silence. The case was brought before Judge Uka, a man known throughout the region not only for his authority, but for an unusual way of seeing situations from unexpected angles. He listened without interruption, his expression calm and unreadable. When the merchant finished, Uka did not respond immediately. He sat quietly, as though allowing the problem to settle on its own. Then, in a voice that was steady and serious, the judge announced his decision. The stone Buddha must be arrested. The words landed softly, but their meaning rippled through the room. Court officials exchanged uncertain glances. The merchant stood frozen, unsure whether he had heard correctly. Arrest the Buddha, the judge continued. The statue stood guard over the shelter. It failed in its duty to protect the people. Therefore, it must answer for this crime. There was no sign of humor in Uka's face, no hint that this was a metaphor or a joke. His authority left no room for debate, and so, with formal ceremony, the officials carried out the order. The heavy stone Buddha was lifted from its roadside shelter and brought into the courthouse, placed before the judge as though it were an accused criminal. News of this strange event spread quickly through the town. People gathered, drawn by curiosity and amusement. They whispered, then laughed, entertained by the absurdity of a statue on trial. The courtroom filled with sound. light-hearted and careless, as the crowd enjoyed what seemed like harmless spectacle. Judge Uka allowed the noise to continue for a while. Then he raised his voice. The room fell silent at once. He spoke sternly, reprimanding the crowd for their disrespect. This was a serious matter, he said. Anyone who treated the court with contempt would face punishment. The laughter vanished. Unease replaced amusement. The crowd suddenly understood that this strange trial was no game. And in that shift, the quiet machinery of the judge's wisdom began to move. Judge Uka looked out over the silent crowd and spoke with measured calm. He said that such behavior showed a lack of respect for the law and for the seriousness of justice. As punishment, every person present would be fined. The words stirred immediate concern. Faces tightened. The ease of amusement had fully disappeared. Then the judge continued, softening his tone just slightly. He said that he was prepared to show mercy. The fine would be lifted if each person returned to the court within 3 days and brought 1 roll of cotton cloth. Anyone who failed to do so would face arrest and a far harsher penalty. The order was clear, and there was no room for negotiation. Relief mixed with confusion moved through the crowd. Cotton cloth was valuable, but not impossible to obtain. Wanting to avoid punishment, the people agreed quickly and left the courthouse, each intending to comply. Over the following days, they returned one by one, carrying rolls of cloth from their homes, shops, and storerooms. The courtroom slowly filled with cotton, stacked neatly before the judge. When the final bundle was placed down, Judge Uka turned to the merchant and asked him to step forward. He invited him to look carefully at the cloth that had been collected. The merchant hesitated, then moved slowly among the stacks, touching the fabric, feeling its texture between his fingers. Almost immediately, recognition arose. One roll felt unmistakably familiar. The weave, the weight, the subtle markings were his. He knew it without doubt. The judge nodded quietly. From that single recognition, the rest unfolded naturally. The owner of the cloth was identified. The truth, which had hidden itself so completely at the roadside shelter, had revealed itself without accusation, without interrogation, and without force. The stolen goods were returned. The remaining cotton was distributed back to its rightful owners. And the stone Buddha, having served its unexpected role, was carried back to the shelter, where it resumed its silent presence by the road, unchanged in expression, untouched by judgment. The Buddha once taught that 3 things cannot remain hidden for long: the sun, the moon, and the truth. Judge Uka understood this deeply. He did not chase the truth. He created the conditions in which it could no longer conceal itself. Zen teachings often remind us that the mind prefers straight lines. We are taught to believe that every problem has a direct cause, a clear culprit, and a predictable solution. When something is lost, we search harder. When something breaks, we force a repair. When confusion appears, we think more intensely. Yet again and again, life presents situations where this familiar approach quietly fails. Judge Uka did not pursue the thief. He did not interrogate, accuse, or pressure. Instead, he stepped outside the expected pattern entirely. His action looked foolish on the surface, even laughable, and yet, it was precisely this break from conventional thinking that allowed truth to surface without resistance. Zen calls this nonlinear wisdom. Not the wisdom of force, but the wisdom of space. When we stop pushing directly against a problem, something deeper begins to move on its own. like water finding its way around stone. Truth often reveals itself when pressure is removed. Consider the struggles you carry quietly in your own life. Perhaps there is a conflict that never resolves, no matter how many conversations you have. A decision that feels impossible, despite careful planning. A pattern that repeats even though you fully understand why it should stop.
In these moments, effort alone may not be the answer. Zen invites a different question. Instead of asking, "How do I fix this?" it asks, "What conditions am I creating? Are you forcing clarity where patience is needed? Are you demanding answers where stillness would speak more clearly? Are you clinging to the idea that solutions must look familiar to be valid?"
The mind often resists unconventional approaches because they feel unsafe. They challenge our sense of control. But Zen teaches that true control is an illusion. Wisdom arises not from tightening our grip, but from learning when to loosen it. Judge Uka trusted the truth did not need to be hunted. It needed room. And once space was created, truth moved on its own, quietly, without drama. As you rest now, allow this teaching to settle gently. You do not need to solve anything tonight. You do not need to reach conclusions. Simply notice where you might be pushing too hard, and imagine what would happen if you stepped back.
Just slightly. Sometimes, the most skillful action is not action at all, but allowing life to reveal itself in its own time. And with that understanding, we move gently onward to a story that speaks not of cleverness or wares, but of service that reaches beyond the self. And as this story settles, there is nothing you need to make sense of.
The events can rest now, and the night continues quietly. In the mountains of Japan, where mist moved slowly through tall pine trees and the sound of a bamboo fountain marked the passing of time, Zen master Gasan lived with a small community of monks in a quiet temple. The days there followed a gentle rhythm that rarely changed. A bell in the early morning, soft footsteps on wooden floors, plain meals taken in silence, long hours of stillness that asked for nothing and expected nothing. One season, that calm was lightly disturbed. A division of the Imperial Army arrived in the nearby mountains to conduct training exercises. The narrow roads that usually carried only travelers and merchants now carried marching feet, brief commands, and the distant clatter of equipment. The exercises were to last several days, and the officers needed a place nearby to use as temporary headquarters. They came to the temple. In many places, soldiers were received with visible respect. Rank was recognized immediately, and special care was offered without being asked. But at the temple gate, Gasan greeted the officers in a simple, unhurried way. He welcomed them politely, without ceremony, without deference, and without refusal. They were told they could stay during the training, and arrangements were made as naturally as if they were ordinary travelers seeking shelter. The temple did not change its pace. The monks continued their routines. The bells rang at the usual hours. Silence returned between movements. Even with soldiers on the grounds, the atmosphere remained calm, almost indifferent to status. The next morning came quietly. The bell rang as it always did. The monks moved through the halls with the same unhurried steps. And when the meal was served, nothing had changed. The bowls were the same. The portions were the same. The food was the same. At first, the officers told themselves it was nothing. Perhaps this was simply how the temple lived. Perhaps change would come later. They ate, waited, and said little. But as the hours passed and the next meal arrived unchanged, a quiet discomfort began to form. It was not hunger. It was not anger. It was the sense of being overlooked. These were men trained within clear structures. Rank was visible. Authority was acknowledged. Sacrifice was answered with respect. Here, none of that seemed to matter. The temple did not resist them. It simply did not respond. Whispers began to appear at the edges of silence. A look exchanged across bowls. A pause held a little too long. Each small moment added weight to the next. By the second evening, the feeling could no longer remain unspoken. One of the senior officers rose from his place. His movement was calm, practiced, and deliberate. He approached Master Ghassan and stopped at a respectful distance. "Master," he said, evenly, "may I speak with you?" Ghassan looked up, attentive but unchanged. The officer continued, choosing his words carefully. "We are grateful for shelter," he said, "but I must ask, do you understand who we are?" He did not wait for an answer. "We are soldiers of the Imperial Army. We serve the Emperor. We train for war. We risk our lives for this country." His voice remained controlled, but something beneath it pressed forward. "And yet here," he added, "we are given the same treatment as everyone else. The same food, the same portions, no distinction." He paused, letting the silence carry the meaning. "This is difficult for us to understand." Nothing in his tone was insulting. Nothing was shouted, but the tension was clear. This was no longer about rice or soup. It was about worth, about recognition, about whether service was being seen at all. The hall grew still. The monks did not move. The bowls rested quietly on the floor. And for a brief moment, the entire space held its breath, waiting for Ghassan's reply. When evening came, the officers were shown their rooms. The spaces were clean and spare. Nothing elaborate, nothing lacking. And when the meal was served, it was the same meal the monks ate every day. A simple bowl of rice, a small portion of vegetables, a thin soup, light tea. Nothing was said about it. No explanations were offered. No adjustments were made. The officers ate quietly. The monks ate quietly. The temple settled back into itself, as if this was the only way it knew how to be. Yet beneath the calm surface, something had begun, not loudly, not visibly, but gently. An expectation had gone unanswered, and in the quiet of that first evening, a subtle tension entered the space, unnoticed by the temple, but already forming within the minds of the men who were used to being treated as something other than ordinary. Ghassan did not hurry to answer. He did not correct the officer's words. He did not explain the temple's customs or offer justification. He looked at the officer quietly, as if allowing the moment to settle fully into the room. Then he spoke. "Who do you think we are?" The officer did not reply. Ghassan continued, his voice calm and even. "We are soldiers of humanity." The words were simple, unadorned. They carried no challenge and no defense. "We aim to save all sentient beings." Nothing more was added. No comparison was made. No judgment was implied. The sentence stood alone, complete in itself. For a moment, the usual measures had nowhere to land. Rank did not answer it. Duty did not explain it. Pride could not argue with it. The words did not oppose the officer's service, nor did they elevate the monks above him. They simply revealed another frame, one that did not depend on recognition. Ghassan did not wait for understanding. He did not seek agreement. Having spoken, he returned to silence as naturally as he had spoken. leaving the meaning to unfold without guidance. The hall remained quiet. The bowls remained where they were. Nothing outwardly changed. And yet, something subtle had shifted. Not through instruction, but through presence. Not through persuasion, but through a single sentence that did not need to be defended. In that stillness, the words continued to work slowly, gently beyond explanation. There are many ways a person can serve. Some forms of service are visible, measured, and named. They come with uniforms, titles, schedules, and clear responsibilities. They are recognized by the world, and the world responds with respect, privilege, and gratitude. In that kind of service, honor is often part of the structure. The role is held up, and the person inside the role is seen. And then there is another kind of service. Quieter, less visible, harder to measure. It does not always receive applause because it does not depend on being noticed. It does not need a stage. It does not require a special seat at the table. It moves slowly, and it works in places that cannot be mapped. One kind of service protects borders, keeps order, and answers threats in the outer world. Another kind of service meets the unrest inside human beings and tries to soften it at the root. One kind is trained in tactics, endurance, and obedience. Another kind is trained in patience, humility, and the willingness to remain steady when nothing is returned. Neither is meaningless, neither is small, but they arise from different centers. When service is tied to identity, it begins to hunger. It needs to be confirmed, it needs to be respected, it needs to be distinct, and when it is not, a quiet resentment can form, even if the person says nothing. When service is tied to something deeper than identity, it does not demand recognition to continue. It can remain ordinary. It can remain simple. It can feed others without needing to be thanked. It can do its work without announcing itself. In the temple, Ghassan did not insult the officers. He did not deny their sacrifice. He simply revealed a wider frame, a service that is not limited by a flag, not contained by rank, and not completed by victory. A service that begins again each day, quietly in the same bowl of rye, in the same patient silence, in the same willingness to meet whatever is present. And when this frame appears, even briefly, the pressure to be special begins to loosen, and something inside can finally rest. As you listen now, you may notice the roles you carry. Some are public, some are private, some have names that others recognize, and some are known only to you. You may be someone who provides, someone who leads, someone who protects, someone who holds everything together in ways that are rarely spoken about. And perhaps, without realizing it, you have also carried a quiet wish inside those roles, to be seen, to be appreciated, to be treated with a little more care. This wish is not wrong. It is human. It often appears when we have given a lot and feel tired without being able to say so. Tonight, you do not need to judge it. You do not need to remove it. You only need to notice it gently, the way you would notice a small knot in the shoulder. Not as a problem, but as a place that has been holding tension for a long time. And then, just for a moment, you can ask yourself softly, if no one recognized my role tomorrow, would I still know who I am? Not as a title, not as a function, not as a responsibility, but as the simple awareness that is here, listening now. You do not have to answer. In Zen, sometimes the most important shift is not a new conclusion, but a small release. A quiet widening. A moment where the role becomes lighter on the body, and the heart does not need to defend itself. So let the roles rest, just for tonight. Let them sit beside you, instead of sitting on top of you. And feel how the breath becomes easier when nothing needs to be proven and nothing needs to be earned. And from this softer place, we can move on to the next story, where a teacher offers the strangest honesty of all. And as this story comes to rest, there is no role you need to carry forward. Everything can be set down now, and the night moves on gently. Long ago, in ancient Japan, there lived an emperor whose power extended across vast lands and countless lives. His words carried weight. His decisions shaped the fate of cities, families, and generations yet to come. Within the palace walls, everything moved according to his command. Order was maintained, needs were met, respect was constant. And yet, beneath the layers of authority and ceremony, a quiet unease had begun to appear. It did not arrive as fear or crisis. It arrived as a question that would not leave. A subtle restlessness that followed him even in moments of comfort. The emperor noticed it in the still hours of the night, when the palace had grown silent and the weight of the crown felt heavier than usual. He noticed it in moments of triumph, when victory brought satisfaction, but not peace. He had been taught many things: strategy, governance, ritual, philosophy. But this unease did not respond to knowledge. The more he tried to understand it, the more it slipped away. Eventually, he heard of a Zen master named Gudo, known not for elaborate teachings, but for a presence that unsettled certainty itself. Gudo lived simply, far from the palace, without concern for rank or recognition. People said he answered questions in ways that did not satisfy the mind, yet somehow left the heart quieter. The emperor decided to visit him. The journey was arranged with care, but without display. When the emperor arrived, there was no grand welcome, no announcement, no acknowledgement of status. Gudo received him as he would receive any visitor, calmly and without hesitation. They sat facing one another in a modest room. The emperor spoke of his position, his responsibilities, and the burdens that came with power. He spoke of his wish to understand the true nature of wisdom, to know what lay beyond success and failure, beyond control and uncertainty. Gudo listened quietly. He did not nod. He did not interrupt. He did not prepare an answer. When the emperor finished speaking, the room returned to silence. The question had been placed carefully between them. And in that stillness, something unexpected was already beginning to unfold. Not through explanation, but through what would soon be revealed as the simplest and most unsettling response of all. The emperor sat upright, his hands resting calmly, his gaze steady. He had asked many questions in his life, and answers usually came quickly. Advisors spoke, scholars explained, priests interpreted. There was always something to receive, something to take back. But Gudo remained silent. The quiet, stretched, unforced. It was not the silence of uncertainty. It was the silence of someone who did not need to arrive anywhere. The emperor felt it, subtly at first. The familiar sense of expectation began to soften. Finally, he spoke again, more directly this time.
"Tell me," the emperor said, "what is the essence of Buddhism?" It was a question formed from years of study and authority. It carried the weight of a ruler seeking a final understanding, something solid enough to rest upon. Gudo looked at him, and without hesitation, without ceremony, he replied with two simple words. "I don't know."
There was no irony in his voice, no humor, no hesitation. The words did not come as a riddle. They were not offered as a lesson. They arrived plainly, as a statement of fact. The Emperor felt a faint disruption, as if the ground beneath a familiar structure had shifted. He waited, expecting more. An explanation. A clarification. A deeper meaning hidden behind the simplicity. But nothing followed. Gudo did not add another sentence. He did not soften the response. He did not rescue the moment with wisdom or metaphor. He simply remained there, present, unchanged. The Emperor searched for footing. In his world, not knowing was a weakness.
Ignorance was something to be corrected. Knowledge was the foundation of authority. And yet, the man before him did not appear uncertain. He appeared at ease. "I don't know," Gudo had said. Not as a refusal, not as an evasion, but as something complete. The question still hung in the room, unanswered in the way the Emperor expected.
And yet, something in the atmosphere had shifted. The need for certainty had loosened slightly. The demand for a final explanation no longer felt as solid as it had moments before. The Emperor remained silent now. The question he had brought with him had not been resolved. It had been gently undone. And in that undoing, a different kind of space had begun to open, one that did not depend on understanding to exist. In the stillness that followed, the Emperor sensed that this meeting was no longer moving toward an answer, but toward something far more unsettling and far more quiet. The Emperor remained seated, waiting. The answer he had received felt unfinished, almost improper. His mind reached for structure, for a teaching he could place among other teachings. The silence pressed gently, and with it came a subtle impatience. "So then," he said at last, "if you do not know, what is the truth?" Gudo did not respond with words. Instead, he lifted his staff and struck it once against the wooden floor. The sound was sharp and sudden, not loud, but unmistakable. It cut cleanly through the stillness, leaving no space for thought to gather. In that instant, the Emperor's attention dropped out of language and into the body. The echo faded quickly, but the moment it created lingered. Gudo did not look at the Emperor for a reaction. He did not explain the gesture or point toward its meaning. He simply remained still, as if nothing unusual had occurred. The Emperor felt a brief disorientation, like waking from a dream. The familiar habit of forming conclusions had been interrupted. For a fraction of a moment, there was no question to hold on to, no concept to compare, no answer to demand, just the sound. Then silence. The room felt clearer, almost bare. The Emperor noticed the weight of his body on the floor, the quiet rhythm of his breath, the simple fact of being there. Nothing had been added, nothing had been taken away. Gudo spoke at last, softly. "Truth is not something you can hold," he said. "The moment you reach for it, you miss it." The words did not explain the sound. They did not translate it into meaning. They only pointed back to the immediacy of the moment that had already passed. The Emperor lowered his gaze. The ground he had been standing on, made of ideas, definitions, and certainty, felt less solid now, and in its place, there was an unfamiliar openness. Not comforting, not threatening, simply present. The meeting had crossed a threshold, not toward clarity, but toward something deeper than understanding, something that did not announce itself and could not be captured once named. After the sound had faded, nothing rushed in to replace it. The Emperor did not feel enlightened. He did not feel confused. He simply felt paused, as though the usual movement of the mind had been gently interrupted and had not yet restarted. This was unfamiliar territory.
In the palace, every question moved toward
Toward an answer. Every problem invited a solution. Knowledge was something gathered, refined, and stored. Here, none of that applied. The moment Gudo had created did not fit into any framework the emperor recognized. Zen often speaks in this way, not by building ideas, but by removing the ground they stand on. Concepts are useful tools, but they are not the thing itself. They describe, compare, and divide. They turn living experience into something manageable. And yet, in doing so, they quietly place a screen between us and what is actually happening. The emperor had come seeking the essence of Buddhism, as if it were an object that could be pointed to and claimed. Gudo's response did not deny the question. It dissolved the assumption beneath it, the assumption that truth must appear as an idea. The sound of the staff had no meaning to analyze. It did not symbolize anything. It was simply what it was, complete in the moment it arose and gone the moment it ended. And for a brief instant, the emperor had met reality without interpretation. Zen calls this direct seeing. Not seeing about something, but seeing it, before labels, before conclusions, before the mind decides what it is encountering. Gudo did not invite the emperor to abandon thought forever. He did not condemn understanding. He simply pointed to something prior, something quieter, a knowing that does not rely on explanation, a clarity that is not produced by effort. In this way, Zen does not add wisdom to the mind. It subtracts the need to grasp. It allows experience to stand on its own, without being translated into belief or doctrine. The emperor sat with this unfamiliar openness. It did not answer his questions, but it softened them. The urgency to resolve, to define, to secure understanding had eased slightly. And in that easing, another possibility appeared. That perhaps truth was not something to be found at the end of thinking, but something already present, waiting patiently for thinking to step aside. The emperor did not ask another question. The urge to clarify had lost its momentum. What remained was not certainty, but a gentle quiet that did not feel empty. It felt sufficient in his world. Understanding had always been a form of control. To name something was to place it within reach. To define it was to make it usable. Yet here, the absence of explanation did not create anxiety. It created space. Gudo did not instruct him to abandon thought. He did not say that understanding was wrong. He simply allowed the emperor to see directly how the need to understand can become a subtle kind of grasping, a way of keeping experience at a distance, safely wrapped in ideas. For a moment, the emperor noticed what happened when he did not reach for meaning. The body remained. The breath continued. The room existed without commentary. Nothing collapsed. Nothing was lost. This was unfamiliar, but not threatening. Zen often points here not to confusion, but to rest. Not to ignorance, but to a humility that allows life to arrive without being filtered. When the need to understand loosens, experience becomes lighter, less defended, less burdened by the demand to make sense. The emperor rose to leave. There was no formal conclusion to the meeting, no final teaching to carry away. And yet, something had shifted, not an answer gained, but a weight released. He bowed, not in certainty, but in acknowledgement of something that could not be named. Gudo returned the bow, unchanged, as if nothing special had occurred. Outside, the path waited. The air was still. The world continued, exactly as it had before. And yet, the emperor walked away with a quieter step,
carrying less than he had brought with him. And as this story comes to rest, there is no answer you need to keep. The question can fade now, and the night continues gently.
The army moved slowly through the countryside. Its presence felt long before it was seen. Dust rose from the road beneath hundreds of footsteps, and the air carried the low sounds of armor shifting, banners brushing against the wind, and quiet commands passed from rank to rank. Ahead lay the battlefield, still unseen, yet already shaping the thoughts of every man who walked toward it. Among the soldiers, the mood was uneven. Some spoke little, conserving energy. Others filled the silence with forced confidence. Laughter appeared briefly, then faded just as quickly. Beneath these surface differences, a shared tension moved quietly through the group. No one could predict what awaited them. No one could be certain who would return. War has a way of narrowing attention. The future becomes sharp and immediate. The body prepares. The mind rehearses danger again and again, as if repetition might grant control. For many of the soldiers, this was their first campaign. The weight of uncertainty pressed heavily on them, even as they tried to hide it behind discipline and routine. At the front rode a seasoned general, calm and observant. He had led men into battle before and understood the invisible currents moving through the ranks. He knew that fear, left unattended, could spread quietly and weaken resolve long before any enemy appeared. And so he watched, listening not only to words, but to what was not being said. As night approached, the army made camp. Fires were lit, and the smell of cooked rice mixed with the scent of earth and metal. The soldiers settled into their places, wrapped in cloaks, staring into the flames or up at the darkening sky. Some thought of home, some thought of honor, some thought only of survival. The battlefield still lay ahead, silent and unknown. Nothing had happened yet. And yet, in the minds of the soldiers, the battle had already begun. Fear and courage moved side by side, each waiting for the moment when uncertainty would give way to action. It was in this quiet before conflict, when nothing was decided and everything felt fragile, that the general prepared to address his men not with strategy or command, but with a gesture that would shift the way they met what lay ahead. As the fire burned lower, the camp grew quieter. Conversations thinned, then disappeared. One by one, the soldiers lay back on the ground, eyes open, staring into the darkness above them. Sleep did not come easily. The body rested, but the mind wandered ahead to a place it had never seen. Fear does not always announce itself loudly. Often it moves in small, careful ways, a tightening in the chest, a breath held a little too long, a thought returning again and again to the same image. Some imagine the clash of steel. Some imagined the moment of impact. Others imagined nothing at all, only a blank that felt heavier than any picture. A few soldiers whispered to one another, pretending to joke. Their laughter rose briefly, then fell away. Others lay silent, counting breaths, counting stars, counting anything that might hold the mind still. Beneath these differences, the same question moved quietly through the camp. What will happen to me? Fear narrowed time. Tomorrow felt close and sharp. The future beyond it felt unreachable. Training and discipline could steady the hands, but they could not quiet the deeper uncertainty. No one knew whose courage would hold and whose would falter when the moment arrived. The general watched from the edge of the firelight. He did not correct the fear. He did not shame it. He knew that fear, when ignored, grows stronger. When fought, It resists, but when met differently, it can change. He understood that the soldiers were not afraid of battle alone. They were afraid of not knowing, afraid of chance, afraid that everything they relied on, skill, strength, preparation, might not be enough. As the night deepened, the general prepared to address them, not with promises of victory, not with threats of punishment, but with a simple act, small enough to be overlooked, yet strong enough to gather the scattered attention of frightened minds. The soldiers did not know it yet, but the gesture that was about to unfold would not remove danger. It would remove something else. The weight of believing that fate was entirely beyond their reach. And in that subtle shift, fear would begin to loosen its hold, making room for a different way of meeting what lay ahead. When the soldiers had gathered, the general did not raise his voice. He did not speak of strategy or danger. Instead, he reached into his cloak and took out a single coin. It was ordinary, worn smooth by time and use. He held it up briefly in the firelight, letting it catch the soldiers' attention. "This coin," he said calmly, "will decide our fate tomorrow." A quiet ripple moved through the group. Some leaned forward, others frowned. The idea felt unsettling, almost careless. To leave life and death to chance seemed unbearable. The general continued. He explained that before battle, he would toss the coin. If it landed heads, they would fight with full confidence, knowing victory was assured. If it landed tails, they would accept defeat as inevitable. Either way, he said, they would know their destiny in advance. Murmurs spread softly. Fear mixed with disbelief. Yet something in the general's composure steadied them. He appeared certain, untroubled, as though the outcome no longer weighed on him. That night, beneath the open sky, the coin was tossed. It landed heads. A quiet exhale passed through the soldiers. Some smiled for the first time since the march began. Others closed their eyes, feeling tension drain from their bodies. The future, which had felt sharp and uncertain, now seemed fixed. Victory was no longer something to earn. It was something already given. They slept more deeply that night. Shoulders loosened. Breath slowed. When morning came, they rose with an unfamiliar lightness. Fear had not vanished, but it no longer dominated their movements. They entered battle with steady hands and clear focus. Every motion felt purposeful. Every step carried confidence, and against expectation, they won. Only afterward did the soldiers discover what the general had done. The coin he used had heads on both sides. After the battle had ended, many believed the victory came from courage, from skill, or from favorable conditions. But something quieter had been at work long before the first sword was lifted. Nothing outside the soldiers had truly changed. The enemy was still larger. The terrain was still difficult. The risks were still real. Yet inside them, something had shifted. Before the coin was tossed, their minds were filled with hesitation. Every step felt heavy. Every thought leaned toward loss. They were already fighting an invisible battle long before facing the enemy. After the coin fell, that inner struggle stopped. They no longer argued with the future. They no longer tried to control the unknown. They believed the outcome was settled. And in that belief, their bodies softened. Breath became steady. Hands became sure. Attention settled fully into the present moment. They were no longer split between fear and action. Zen does not say that belief magically bends the world. It points instead to something more subtle.
When the mind is no longer divided, energy gathers. When doubt releases its grip, movement becomes clear. When we stop arguing with what might happen, we finally meet what is. The soldiers did not win because fate favored them. They won because nothing inside them
Resisted the moment they were in. In the absence of inner conflict, action flows naturally. This is how belief shapes reality, not by changing circumstances, but by removing the friction within us. You may notice this in your own life. When you trust yourself, even slightly, your body responds, your breathing deepens, your shoulders lower, your thoughts slow. When you doubt yourself, the opposite happens. The same task becomes heavier. The same path feels harder. Nothing external has changed, only the relationship to it. The general understood this. The coin was never about destiny. It was about quieting the mind. And once the mind rests, reality meets us halfway. After the truth of the coin was revealed, some of the soldiers laughed softly. Others felt a quiet astonishment. What they had believed to be destiny had been, all along, a simple gesture shaped by human hands. And yet, the victory was real. This is where Zen turns the story gently in another direction. It was not fate that carried them forward, but it was also not pure control. Something in between had been at work. The general did not command the future. He did not deny uncertainty. He simply chose how to meet it. He accepted the conditions as they were outnumbered, exposed, unsure. And within that acceptance, he acted. This is the subtle space Zen points to. We are not as powerless as we sometimes believe, and we are not as powerful as our fear or pride imagines. Fate is not a fixed road laid out ahead of us, nor is it something we can bend at will. It is shaped moment by moment by how we stand, by how we breathe, by how we meet what arrives. The soldiers did not choose the size of the enemy. They did not choose the terrain, but they did choose whether to fight while divided inside or while whole, and that choice changed everything. In your own life, there may be situations that feel already decided. Outcomes you fear, paths you feel forced to walk. Zen does not ask you to deny these conditions. It asks only one quiet question. How will you be present within them when you release the struggle against what cannot be changed? Energy returns to what can, and often, that is enough. The coin of destiny, you may discover, has always been resting in your own hand. As this story comes to a close, nothing more is required of you. Let the question of control soften and allow the night to continue unfolding. In the quiet hall of the monastery, Master Gassan sat before his students as the late afternoon light slowly shifted across the wooden floor. No bells rang, no incense was lit. Only the soft sound of breathing filled the room. The teaching that day began with something familiar. The first precept, Gassan reminded them gently, is the vow not to kill, not to take life, not to harm living beings, not to act from violence. The students nodded. They had heard this teaching many times before. They knew its meaning well, or so they believed. They avoided harming insects when they could. They ate simply. They walked carefully, aware of the fragility of life. Gassan allowed the silence to linger. Then he spoke again, slowly. To protect life is good, he said. To spare even the smallest creature is good. His voice was calm, almost reassuring. The students felt steady in their understanding. This was the Buddhism they knew. Clear, ethical, grounded. But Gassan did not stop there. He looked at them, one by one, as if waiting for something to settle. And yet, he continued, there are many kinds of killing that go unnoticed. The room grew still. The students shifted slightly. Something in his tone had changed, not sharper, just deeper, as if the teaching was moving inward, away from the visible world and into places harder to name. Ghassan did not accuse. He did not raise his voice. He simply let the words rest. What of those? He asked quietly. Who killed time? Who killed truth? Who killed the spirit of the teaching itself? No one answered. The familiar certainty the students carried began to loosen. What they thought was complete suddenly felt unfinished. The vow not to kill, Ghassan suggested, was not only about blood and breath. It was about how life is treated in every moment, and the teaching had only just begun. Ghassan did not explain right away. He allowed the question to remain in the air, like a bell that had been struck and not yet faded. The students sat quietly, waiting, listening not just with their ears, but with their bodies. When we speak of killing, Ghassan said at last, we often imagine something sudden, visible, final, a blade, a blow, a moment that cannot be undone. But there are other ways life is diminished, much quieter, much slower. To kill time, he continued, is to treat this moment as disposable. The words moved gently through the room. Time, he suggested, is not something we have too much of, nor something we can save for later. It is life itself, arriving only once, then passing. When time is killed through distraction, through endless postponement, through habits that numb rather than nourish, something subtle is lost. Not dramatically, not all at once, but steadily. And then Ghassan spoke of truth. To kill truth, he said, is not always to lie. It is to repeat words without seeing, to speak from memory rather than presence, to echo ideas that feel safe, familiar, approved. Truth, in Zen, is not a conclusion. It is a living thing. It breathes only when met directly. When truth is spoken without contact, without realization, it grows thin, it loses warmth, it becomes sound without life. The students felt this more than they understood it. They began to sense that killing, as Ghassan described it, was not about intention alone. Many acts of harm are done without malice, out of habit, out of convenience, out of forgetting. Killing time, killing truth. Both happen when we are not fully here, not cruelly, just absent. And in that absence, life quietly drains away. Ghassan did not ask the students to change anything immediately. He did not offer methods or corrections. He simply let the weight of the words settle. Because once something is truly seen, it cannot be unseen. Ghassan remained seated, his posture unchanged. The students sensed that the teaching was moving closer to something delicate, something easily misunderstood. There is another kind of killing, he said quietly, more subtle than the others. No one shifted. Even the smallest sounds seemed to pause. To speak of the way, Ghassan continued, without walking it, is to wound it. He did not say this with severity. There was no judgment in his voice, only a calm recognition. Words, he reminded them, carry weight, especially sacred words. When teachings are repeated without being lived, they lose their vitality. They become shapes without breath, sounds without roots. The Dharma, when spoken from memory alone, turns hollow, not because the words are wrong, but because they are empty of contact. Ghassan spoke of sermons delivered beautifully, yet untouched by silence, of phrases polished and passed along, yet never tested in the rawness of daily life, of teachings used to appear wise, kind, or correct rather than to awaken. This, he said,
is how the Dharma is killed. Not by enemies, not by criticism, but by misuse. The students felt an unease settle in their chests. Many of them had spoken of Zen with confidence. They had quoted masters. They had explained concepts. But how much of it had truly passed through their own bones, Ghassan did not forbid teaching.
He did not silence them. He simply pointed. When words arise from realization, they are alive, even if few. When words arise from habit, they decay, even if many. The room grew very still. In that stillness, the students began to sense a deeper responsibility, not to speak less, but to speak more honestly, or perhaps to wait longer before speaking at all. Ghassan let the silence complete the teaching. Ghassan did not list rules. He did not draw clear lines. Instead, he invited the students to look more closely. Most harm, he said softly, does not announce itself.
It does not arrive with anger or cruelty. It arrives quietly, disguised as normal. Killing, as he described it, often wears familiar faces, rushing through a day without ever arriving, speaking to be heard, not to be true, consuming without noticing what is taken. These acts do not feel violent. They feel efficient.
They feel ordinary. And yet, something living is diminished each time. Ghassan spoke of attention as a form of nourishment. Where attention rests, life grows. Where it is withdrawn, life thins. To ignore one's own breath for hours, to dismiss another's presence while waiting for a turn to speak, to treat silence as empty rather than full. These are not crimes in the world. But they are injuries in the heart. The students began to sense that non-killing was not a rule to obey, but a sensitivity to cultivate. Not asking, am I doing harm, but asking, is life being honored here? This kind of seeing does not judge.
It notices. When awareness sharpens, choices soften. One speaks less quickly, moves less harshly, consumes less blindly. Not because one is trying to be good, but because one can feel more clearly. Ghassan reminded them that intention alone is not enough. Good intentions can still cause harm when awareness is absent.
Non-killing, in its deepest sense, is presence. To be fully here with what is. To meet life without rushing past it. To allow moments to breathe. The students felt the teaching settle into their bodies, not as a command, but as a quiet calibration, like adjusting a lamp so the light falls gently, without glare. Nothing dramatic changed, only the way they looked. Ghassan did not ask his students to become careful in a tense way. He did not suggest watching every step with fear of mistake. He spoke instead of a different quality. A way of living that naturally protects life because it is already in touch with it. When you are present, he said quietly, life protects itself. To live as a protector of life does not require heroism. It requires intimacy. To eat with awareness, not greed. To speak with care, not performance. To rest when tired, not push through absence. This is how life is honored, not through effort, but through attention. Ghassan reminded them that violence is born from separation. When we feel cut off, rushed, unseen, unheard, we move roughly, but when connection returns, movement softens on its own. Hands become gentler, words become fewer. Time is no longer something to escape. To protect life, then, is to stop abandoning the moment we are in. The students understood that non-killing was not only restraint, it was nourishment. to nourish silence, to nourish truth, to nourish the unseen life moving through every breath. Nothing needed to be added. Only something needed to stop. The constant leaving. As the teaching came to rest, the room felt fuller than before. Not with answers, but with care. As this teaching quietly settles, there is nothing to remember, nothing to apply. Let awareness remain gentle and allow the next story to arrive on its own. High in the mountains, where the seasons changed quietly and the world seemed far away, Master Kassan lived among a small community of monks. The temple was simple, built of aged wood and stone, surrounded by pine trees that whispered softly whenever the wind passed through. Here, life moved slowly. Each day followed the same gentle rhythm. Morning bells, silent meals, long hours of sitting. There were no crowds, no officials, no expectations beyond practice itself. In this protected stillness, Kassan's understanding deepened naturally. His posture was steady, his voice calm. His presence carried a quiet confidence shaped by years of uninterrupted practice. The monks looked up to him with respect. They saw a teacher who never seemed shaken, someone whose mind remained clear regardless of circumstance. And in this environment, it was true. Within the monastery walls, Kassan moved with ease. The simplicity of the setting supported his composure. Silence was abundant. Roles were clear. Nothing pulled at him unexpectedly. It was a life carefully arranged around inner peace. Yet without realizing it, something subtle was happening. His understanding had grown strong where conditions were gentle. His balance had matured where the ground was even. There had been no need to test it elsewhere. Kassan did not feel incomplete. He did not feel unprepared. From the inside, everything seemed whole. And so, when a message arrived from beyond the mountain, an invitation, carrying weight, formality, and attention, he accepted without hesitation. He believed his practice was stable. He believed his composure would travel with him. He did not yet know that understanding, like a flame, reveals its true strength only when the wind changes. The mountain remained quiet behind him as he prepared to step beyond its shelter. The ceremony took place, far from the mountain. Kassan arrived at a large temple in the provincial capital, where banners hung quietly in the air and the sound of footsteps echoed against stone. The space felt heavier than the one he had left behind, filled with formality, rank, and eyes that measured every movement. This was not the silence of practice. It was the silence of attention. Officials gathered in careful order. Nobles stood in silk robes. Faces remained composed, yet alert. Every gesture carried meaning. Every pause was observed. Kassan felt it immediately, not as fear, but as pressure. The ritual began slowly. Chanting rose and fell. Incense curled upward. The rhythm was familiar, yet the atmosphere was not. The weight of expectation pressed gently, persistently, against his chest. He adjusted his posture. He steadied his breath. But something inside him tightened. Thoughts appeared, where none usually did. Was he standing correctly? Was his voice steady enough? Were his movements precise? Each question arrived quietly, yet each one pulled him a little further from the ease he knew so well. As the ceremony continued, warmth spread across his brow. His palms felt damp. His breath shortened just slightly enough for him to notice. No one else could see it clearly, but Kassan could. The stillness he carried so easily in the mountains wavered here. among formality and gaze. Not dramatically, not outwardly, but inwardly, he felt the shift. The ritual ended without error. The words were spoken. The bows were made. The crowd dispersed with a respectful calm. From the outside, everything had gone well. Yet as Kassan stood alone afterward, the truth settled quietly. His practice had been sincere, his understanding real, but it had not yet learned how to stand in every wind. The temple grew quiet again, and in that quiet, Kassan listened closely to something he could no longer ignore. That evening, after the guests had departed and the ceremonial halls emptied, Kassan returned to his lodging. The room was quiet, simple, unadorned, and yet, his body had not followed him back into stillness. As he sat alone, the events of the day replayed without invitation. The weight of watching eyes, the careful steps, the effort to remain composed. Only now did he notice how tired he felt. His robe clung slightly to his skin. A faint chill ran through him as the air cooled. He lifted a hand and felt the dampness at his temple. Sweat, not from heat, not from labor, but from strain. Kassan closed his eyes and breathed slowly, as he had done thousands of times before. The breath came, but it did not settle him in the same way.
Thoughts lingered. The body remained tense. And in that moment, clarity arrived. Not as shame, not as failure, but as recognition. He saw with surprising gentleness that his composure had depended on the quiet of the mountain, that his balance had grown in conditions that asked little of him. When those conditions changed, something inside him had reached its limit. This was not a flaw to hide. It was a truth to face. Kassan did not try to excuse the experience. He did not blame the ceremony or the crowd. He simply acknowledged what had been revealed. His practice had depth, but it was not yet complete. The realization did not disturb him. It steadied him. For the first time that day, his breathing softened on its own. The sweat on his skin cooled. The thoughts loosened their grip. And in that quiet recognition, a decision began to take shape, one that would change the course of his path. When Kassan returned to the mountain temple, nothing around him had changed. The trees still stood quietly. The paths were still familiar. The monks greeted him with the same respectful bows as before. Yet inside him, something had shifted. He gathered the community not long after his return. There was no announcement, no ceremony. The monks sat as they always did, expecting instruction, perhaps a reflection from the journey. Kassan looked at them calmly. "I have discovered something," he said. His voice was steady, but softer than usual. "In the quiet of this place, my practice has grown strong. But beyond these walls, it faltered." The monks listened closely. Some felt confused, others uneasy. Kassan had never spoken like this before. "I believed my understanding would remain unchanged wherever I went." He continued. "I was mistaken." There was no apology in his words, no self-judgment, only honesty. "My bearing was not the same in all conditions," he said. "And because of that, I am not yet ready to guide you fully." The room remained silent. Then Kassan spoke the words no one expected. "I will step down as your teacher." A quiet ripple moved through the monks. Shock, concern, resistance. Some wanted to protest, but Kassan raised a hand gently. "This is not retreat," he said. "It is return." He explained that he would seek another teacher, someone who could help him cultivate a steadiness that did not depend on place, role, or circumstance.
to sit as a student again, to be corrected, to be unsettled. Not because he lacked understanding, but because he honored it. Kassan bowed deeply to the assembly. The monks did not yet understand the depth of this decision, but they felt its sincerity. There was no trace of pride in it, only commitment. And in that commitment, something rare was revealed. True practice does not protect an image. It protects the path. Years passed. Kassan lived again as a student, not in the shelter of the mountain he once led,
but under conditions that offered no special comfort. Cities, crowds, formalities, unexpected demands. Places where silence did not arrive on its own. He did not explain who he had been. He did not defend his past understanding. He listened, he practiced, he allowed himself to be shaped, day after day.
His composure was tested not through ceremony, but divided through the ordinary weight of life. Delays, disagreements, noise, fatigue, praise, criticism, and slowly, something changed. Not his knowledge, not his words, but his bearing. Whether addressed with respect or disregard, he remained the same. Whether the room was quiet or crowded, his breath stayed even. Whether he stood before peasants or officials, nothing tightened inside. The calm that once depended on silence no longer needed it. When Kassan finally returned to the mountain, the monk saw it immediately. He spoke no differently. He moved no more carefully than before, yet his presence carried a steadiness that did not lean on surroundings. This was humility, not the lowering of oneself, but the absence of something to protect. Kassan taught again, not from authority, but from alignment. Nothing in him resisted the moment he stood in, and that is why his words now rested easily in others. Because they were no longer supported by conditions, they were supported by truth. As this story settles, there is nothing to admire, nothing to compare. Let the idea of improvement dissolve and allow the quiet to remain. One afternoon, beneath the broad canopy of the Bodhi tree, the Buddha sat quietly with his disciples. The air was still. Leaves shifted only slightly in the warmth. Nothing in the scene suggested a special teaching was about to unfold. There was no question asked, no debate, no request for explanation. And yet, the Buddha began to speak. Not to instruct, but to describe. "I see kings and rulers," he said calmly, as dust drifting in the wind. The disciples listened without reaction. They had learned not to grasp too quickly, not to interpret before the words had finished settling. "I see treasures of gold and jewels," the Buddha continued, as stones scattered along a roadside. His voice did not carry judgment. There was no rejection in it, only observation. He spoke of silk robes as worn cloth, of grand palaces as passing shadows, of fame and status as echoes that vanish as soon as they arise. The disciples felt something gently loosen in their chests. These were not metaphors meant to shock. They were descriptions from a different vantage point. The Buddha was not denying the existence of the world. He was describing how it appears when seen without attachment. From this perspective, nothing needed to be pushed away, and nothing needed to be held. The Buddha went on.
"I see all worlds," he said, "as seeds floating in space, and the greatest oceans as a single drop resting on the sole of my foot." The disciples did not try to understand. They simply listened, because something in the way the Buddha spoke made it clear this was not philosophy. It was vision, a way of seeing in which weight dissolves.
Importance softens, and struggle fades without effort. The world had not changed. Only the distance between the heart and the world had. And in that quiet space, everything became lighter. The Buddha did not pause to clarify his meaning. He did not explain why such things appeared light to him. He simply continued to describe what he saw. I look upon fine garments, he said, as rags left behind. I see teachings praised by the world, as tricks of light, like the illusions of a magician. The disciples felt no rejection in these words, only release. What the world called success, the Buddha saw as temporary arrangement.
What the world called failure, he saw as movement within a larger flow. Nothing was elevated, nothing was diminished. Values, as they were commonly held, seemed to turn gently upside down, not violently, not argumentatively, but naturally, like leaves falling when the season changes. He spoke of victory and loss as passing weather,
of praise and blame as sounds fading in open space, of certainty itself as something that comes and goes. The Buddha was not telling them to abandon the world. He was showing them how the world loosens its grip when it is no longer used to define who we are. When nothing is clung to, everything can be touched. The disciples noticed how the body responded to these words. Shoulders softened, breath deepened. The mind stopped reaching for conclusions. To see this way did not require effort. It required distance. Not distance from life, but distance from the stories wrapped around it. The Buddha's vision did not flatten the world into meaninglessness. It freed meaning from weight. Gold could still shine. Palaces could still stand. Roles could still be played. But none of them needed to be carried inside. When values reverse like this, something gentle happens. The heart no longer needs to compete. The mind no longer needs to measure. And rest becomes possible not because life has been solved, but because it no longer has to be held so tightly. The Buddha continued speaking, his voice unchanged, neither solemn nor elevated, as if he were describing something entirely ordinary. He said that when he looked at the world, he did not see solid things standing apart from one another. He saw movement. He saw appearance and disappearance. He saw forms arising the way clouds gather in the sky, briefly taking shape before thinning and dissolving back into open space. What the disciples called reality, he experienced as flow. Mountains were not fixed objects to him, but long conversations between earth and time. Rivers were not things to possess or cross, but motion itself, revealing a path. Even the body, so often treated as me, appeared as a temporary arrangement of breath, warmth, sensation, and awareness, and held together for a while, then gently released. This was what he meant by emptiness. Not nothingness, unhurried, not absence, but freedom from solidity. Things existed, yet did not cling to existence. They appeared, yet were not trapped in their appearance. Nothing stood alone. Nothing carried its own permanent weight. To see this way was not to reject the world, but to be released from fighting it. When nothing is fixed, nothing needs to be defended. When nothing is owned, nothing can truly be lost. The disciples felt this teaching not as an idea, but as a softening. The effort to hold life together relaxed. The mind stopped bracing itself against change. In that moment, even fear loosened, because fear depends on something solid to protect. The Buddha did not ask them to understand emptiness. He simply allowed them to feel what happens when the grip on things eases, and life is allowed to move as it already is. The Buddha did not speak of emptiness to pull the disciples away from life. He spoke of it so they could finally rest inside it. He said that when the world is seen clearly, It is like a dream not because it is false, but because it is fluid. Scenes change, roles shift, joy and sorrow rise and fall without asking permission. To live as if the dream were solid is to struggle. To see it as a dream is to move freely within it. He told them that people suffer not because the dream exists, but because they forget it is a dream. They cling to moments as if they must last forever. They resist endings as if they were mistakes. They try to hold what is already moving, and in doing so, they wake into tension rather than peace. To live without being deluded, he said, does not mean becoming distant or cold. It means participating fully while knowing the nature of what is happening. One can love deeply without trying to freeze love in time. One can work earnestly without tying one's worth to outcomes. One can grieve honestly without believing grief defines the whole of life. The disciples felt the gentleness in this way of living. Nothing was denied. Nothing was exaggerated. Life continued exactly as before, sounds, colors, relationships, duties, but the weight had changed. It was no longer necessary to carry everything as if it were permanent. The Buddha explained that awakening is not stepping outside the dream. It is knowing you are dreaming while still walking, speaking, eating, and caring. When this knowing is present, fear softens because there is nothing solid to defend. Desire softens because there is nothing missing to complete you. In this way, one lives lightly, not by escaping the world, but by meeting it without confusion. The dream continues, yet the heart is awake, and in that awakening, even the dream becomes kind. As the Buddha finished speaking, nothing in the world appeared to change. The light remained soft. The air remained still. The disciples remained seated exactly where they were. And yet, something essential had loosened. It was as if a weight they had been carrying for so long had simply slipped from their hands without effort. To see clearly, the Buddha suggested, is not to gain something new. It is to stop adding what was never needed. When clarity arises, life does not become simpler on the outside. Responsibilities remain. Loss still comes. Joy still passes. But the heart no longer tightens around each moment as if it must be held forever. In this seeing, even difficulty becomes lighter. Not because it disappeared, but because it is no longer mistaken for something permanent. Pain is felt fully, yet it does not harden into identity. Pleasure is enjoyed honestly, yet it does not demand continuation. Everything is allowed to arrive and leave in its own time. The Buddha did not offer a practice to force this lightness. He did not suggest effort or discipline in that moment. He simply revealed what happens naturally when illusion falls away. When nothing is grasped, nothing weighs us down. When nothing is resisted, nothing needs to be pushed through. The disciples felt how this understanding settled not in the mind, but in the body. Breathing softened. Muscles released. The endless need to manage life relaxed into trust. Not trust that everything would go well, but trust that whatever arose could be met without confusion. This was the gift of seeing clearly. Not escape, not certainty, just ease. And in that ease, rest appeared on its own. As this vision gently fades, there is nothing to hold and nothing to remember. Allow the lightness to remain, and let the next story arrive quietly. One day, a student approached his teacher carrying a question that felt practical, even reasonable. He had been watching people trade, measure, and compare all their lives. And he wondered where truth stood within that endless exchange. Sitting before the teacher, He asked what something was truly worth, and how one could know its real value beyond opinion or price. The teacher did not answer right away. He looked at the student calmly, as if allowing the question to settle into the room before touching it. Outside, the day continued as usual. Footsteps passed. Voices drifted. Nothing marked the moment as important.
Yet the question remained, steady and sincere. The student explained further. He spoke of objects that people fight over, protect, insure, and mourn when lost. He spoke of how value seems to change depending on who is looking, who is buying, who is afraid of losing. He wanted something solid to stand on, something that would not shift with circumstance. The teacher listened without interruption. When the student finished, the teacher reached for something nearby. Simple and unremarkable. He held it briefly, then set it down again. There was no explanation attached, no gesture to clarify its meaning. "Tell me," the teacher said at last, "what is this worth?" The student hesitated. He named a number, then reconsidered. He added conditions. If it were rare, perhaps more. If damaged, perhaps less. His answer changed as he spoke, adjusting itself to imagine context. The teacher nodded gently, not in agreement, but in recognition. Value, it seemed, was already moving. The student felt a subtle discomfort. The ground he hoped to stand on did not feel as firm as he had expected. The question he brought had not been dismissed, yet it had not been answered in the way he anticipated. Something quieter was happening, something that did not rely on calculation. The teacher remained silent now, allowing the student to feel the shifting nature of his own response. And in that silence, the question of value began to turn inward, away from objects and toward the one who was measuring. The teacher did not correct the student's answer. He did not argue with the numbers or the conditions that had just been offered. Instead, he reached to the side and uncovered a small bundle wrapped in cloth. He placed it on the floor between them and gently opened it. Inside lay the severed head of a dead cat. The student recoiled before he could stop himself. His breath caught. His mind rushed to protest, to question the necessity of such a thing, to demand an explanation. The room felt suddenly sharper, as if the quiet itself had been disturbed. The teacher remained calm. "Now," he said, "tell me what this is worth." The student could not answer. No number came. No condition helped. The habits of calculation that had worked moments before fell apart. Whatever value meant in the marketplace, it did not reach here. Whatever meaning he had learned to assign to objects could not be applied. The teacher did not look at the cat. He looked at the student. "Before," he said softly, "you could speak easily. You adjusted your answer. You negotiated with the idea of value." He paused. "Now, you cannot." The student felt a mixture of discomfort and clarity. Nothing about the object itself had changed his ability to measure. What had changed was the place from which he was measuring. The shock had stripped away distance. There was no safety in abstraction anymore. The teacher continued, his voice unchanged. "When value is measured from thought, it moves. When it is measured from the body, it collapses. And when it is measured from direct contact, it disappears entirely." The cat was not precious. It was not worthless. It simply was. The student began to understand that the teacher was not being cruel. He was not making a point for effect. He was revealing the limits of the question itself. Value, as the student had been seeking it,
required separation. It required a viewer standing apart, calculating from a safe distance. Here, that distance was gone. The teacher covered the bundle again and set it aside. The room returned to stillness. But the student knew something irreversible had occurred. The question he brought could no longer be held in the same way. And in its place, something quieter had begun to take root. The teacher did not linger on what had been shown. He did not explain it further or justify the moment. He allowed the student's breath to return on its own,
Allowed the mind to settle after the interruption. What cannot be priced, he said quietly, does not ask to be. The student noticed how different this felt from moments before. When numbers were possible, the mind stayed active, adjusting, comparing, protecting itself with distance. Now there was no distance left, nothing to negotiate.
The habit of measuring had nowhere to stand. The teacher spoke again, gently, as if describing a landscape rather than a lesson. Value exists where separation exists. It needs a buyer and a seller, a gain and a loss. When separation dissolves, value dissolves with it. The student felt this not as an idea, but as a release. The need to decide softened. The urge to judge quieted. What remained was a simple presence with what was already here, unlabeled and unowned. In direct contact, the teacher continued, "Things do not ask to be weighed, they ask to be met." He paused. Life itself cannot be priced, because it is not an object among objects.
It is the ground on which objects appear. The student understood then why the question had collapsed. It was not wrong, it was incomplete. It assumed a position outside life, a place from which to calculate. That place did not exist. Silence filled the room again, but this time it felt wide and steady. The student's body relaxed into the floor. The mind stopped reaching for conclusions. Nothing needed to be decided or defended. The teacher said no more. There was nothing to add. What cannot be valued cannot be taken away. And what cannot be taken away no longer needs to be protected. In that realization, the student felt something rare and ease that did not depend on answers. The teacher let the silence do its work before speaking again. He did not reject the world of exchange the student knew so well. He acknowledged it calmly, as something that functions, but only within its own boundaries. In the marketplace, he said, value is necessary. It helps things move. It allows people to trade, to plan, to survive. Coins pass hands, numbers settle disputes, agreements form. None of this is wrong. What becomes confusing, he continued, is when the logic of the market is carried into places it cannot reach. When worth is used to measure a person, when price is used to measure meaning, when loss and gain are allowed to define what is alive and what is not. The student recognized this movement in himself. How easily he compared. How quickly he evaluated moments by what they produced. Even rest had been weighed against usefulness. Even silence had been judged by outcome. In the market, the teacher said, things are valuable because they are scarce. But life is not scarce in that way. Breath keeps arriving. Moments keep unfolding. No one can corner the supply. And so the tools of the market fail here. They cannot measure what does not belong to ownership. He spoke of how people try to ensure happiness, invest in security, hoard certainty, worry it, as if peace were a commodity that could be purchased in advance. And yet, the more one tries to secure it, the further it slips away. The student felt the truth of this quietly, without resistance. The market has its place, the teacher said, but it cannot tell you who you are.
When its language is used everywhere, even the heart begins to speak in numbers and a worth rises and falls, eternus, a fear grows, comparison tightens. The teacher did not ask the student to abandon the world. He asked him only to see where its rules end, to let money be money, let trade be trade, and to leave life itself unmeasured. When this boundary is clear, the student sensed something gentle returns. Effort eases. Attention widens. The heart steps out of competition and into contact. Value still exists where it belongs, but it no longer weighs down what cannot be priced. The teacher did not return to the object that had disrupted the student's thinking. There was no need. The work had already been done. What remained now was to let the understanding settle into something quieter than thought. "You have been looking for value," the teacher said softly, as if it were hidden somewhere else. He paused. "But what you are truly seeking is what has never been missing." The student listened, no longer trying to solve anything. The effort to conclude had faded. What replaced it was a simple attentiveness, open and unguarded. When the habit of measuring loosens, the teacher continued, something becomes obvious. He spoke slowly, letting each word land without weight. What is here does not need to be earned. It does not need to be proven. It does not rise or fall. The student felt this truth not as a realization to claim, but as a relief. The endless comparing between moments, between people, between himself and the world lost its urgency. There was nothing to win and nothing to protect. The greatest treasure, the teacher said, is the one you stop trying to secure. It is the quiet capacity to be present, to meet what arrives without turning it into a transaction. When that is seen, even ordinary moments carry a fullness that cannot be increased or diminished. The room felt calm, not empty, but complete. The student noticed the sound of his own breathing, the steadiness of the floor beneath him, the simple fact of being alive without needing to justify it. The teacher fell silent. He did not offer a conclusion. He did not frame the insight as an achievement. He allowed the moment to stand on its own, and in that standing, the student understood what could not be explained earlier. What is most precious is not something added to life. It is what remains when the need to assign value finally falls away. As this story comes to rest, there is nothing to calculate, nothing to carry forward. Let the sense of enough remain, and allow the night to continue. 4 students once gathered in a small temple and made a vow together. They would observe complete silence for a fixed period of time, not as a test of endurance, but as a way of seeing the mind more clearly. No speaking, no signaling, no explanation, only shared quiet. At first, the silence felt spacious. The absence of words brought relief. Without conversation, there was nothing to defend, nothing to perform. Each student settled into the rhythm of the day, attending to simple tasks, noticing sounds as they arose and passed. The temple breathed quietly around them. As time moved on, subtler movements appeared. Thoughts grew louder in the absence of speech. Each student noticed impulses that had previously gone unnoticed, the urge to comment, to correct, to be acknowledged. Silence, instead of dulling the mind, had begun to illuminate it. One evening, as they sat together, a small lamp flickered in the corner of the room. The flame bent briefly, then steadied. One of the students shifted slightly, distracted by the movement.
Another noticed the shift and felt irritation rise. No words were spoken, yet something had already changed. Moments later, a sound escaped, a simple remark, spoken without much thought. The silence was broken. The student who spoke froze,
realizing what had happened. The others turned toward him, expressions mixed with surprise and judgment. The atmosphere tightened. What had felt open now felt fragile. A second student reacted immediately, speaking out in frustration about the broken vow. A third joined in, pointing out the hypocrisy of correcting someone while also breaking the silence. The fourth watched quietly, noticing how quickly words multiplied once the first barrier fell. In just a few moments, the room filled with voices. The vow lay forgotten, replaced by explanation, blame, and defense. Silence had not been lost slowly. It had vanished all at once.
When the voices finally settled, the group sat in the aftermath. The quiet returned, but it was different now. Not empty, not wide, but instructive. Something had been revealed, not about silence itself, but about what lives just beneath it, waiting patiently for the chance to speak. First word had already faded,
yet its effect remained. What followed was not a single mistake, but a sequence that unfolded almost by itself. One speech returned. It moved quickly, as if it had been waiting for permission. One student explained why he had spoken. Another responded, insisting the explanation itself was unnecessary. A third added a clarification meant to restore order. Each sentence arrived with the intention to fix something, and each one quietly widened the break. No one noticed the moment when silence truly disappeared. It did not leave with the first word. It left when attention turned outward, toward who was right, who had failed, and who should have known better. The students began to defend themselves, not loudly but firmly. Tone shifted, shoulders tightened, breath shortened. The room, which had once held them without effort, now felt narrow. What surprised them most was how reasonable every sentence sounded. Each remark made sense on its own. Each response felt justified. And yet together, they formed a chain that pulled them further from the quiet they had intended to protect. The teacher, who had been present throughout, remained silent. He did not intervene. He did not correct the sequence. He allowed it to complete itself. Eventually, the words ran out. They always do. Explanations exhausted their purpose. Justifications lost momentum. The students fell quiet again, not by choice, but by lack of anything left to say. In the stillness that followed, the contrast was clear. The silence now felt different from before, heavier, more revealing. It carried the trace of what had just passed through it. The students sensed something important. The breaking of the vow hadn't been caused by a single lapse. It had been sustained by reaction. Each response had leaned on the previous one, forming a chain that only silence could have ended. And in seeing this, they began to understand that silence is not merely the absence of words. It is the absence of unnecessary continuation. The moment that continuation begins, even softly, the chain takes hold. The room rested again, holding the lesson without speaking it aloud. As the quiet returned, the students noticed something more subtle than the noise that had filled the room moments before. Even without speaking, the mind continued its movements. Thoughts compared, judgments formed. Images of oneself as careful, disciplined, or justified quietly took shape. No words were needed for this. Each student could feel it in the body. A slight tightening in the chest,
A familiar urge to be seen as correct, the wish to be different from the one who had first spoken. Silence had returned on the surface. Yet, underneath, something was still speaking. The teacher finally looked up. "What spoke just now?" he asked calmly. Before any words were spoken, no one answered.
He did not wait for a response. He simply continued, describing what they were already sensing. The self that wants to appear right does not need a voice. It can operate entirely within thought. It can hide behind good intentions, behind discipline, even behind silence itself. This is how the ego becomes refined. It no longer shouts. It no longer demands attention openly. It whispers. It takes pride in restraint. It compares quietly. It feels superior for remaining quiet while others fail. The students felt a gentle discomfort as they recognized this movement in themselves. Silence, which they had assumed was pure, had become another place to stand apart.
The teacher did not condemn this. He did not say the ego should be destroyed. He simply pointed out how easily it adapts. When words are removed, it uses thoughts. When thoughts are questioned, it uses identity. When identity is challenged, it uses virtue. Seeing this clearly did not create tension. It created honesty. The students realized that the vow had not failed them. It had revealed something deeper. Silence had not been broken by sound alone. It had been broken by the need to be someone within it. And in that recognition, another layer of effort quietly fell away. The teacher waited until the room had settled into a quieter kind of stillness, one that did not feel tight or watchful. Then he spoke again, not to correct what had happened, but to point towards something simpler. True silence, he said, is not created by effort. The students listened without lifting their heads. They could feel how effort had shaped their earlier quiet, the careful holding back of words, the vigilance, the subtle pride and restraint. All of it had required maintenance. All of it had depended on control. That silence, the teacher continued, is fragile. It breaks easily because it is built on tension. He did not criticize it. He acknowledged it as a natural stage. When silence is forced, it becomes another task, another role, another place for the self to hide. Real silence, he said softly, appears when there is nothing left to add, not when words are suppressed, but when the need to speak falls away, not when thoughts are pushed down, but when they are allowed to pass without being followed, not when identity is refined, but when it is not being protected. The students felt the difference immediately. Their breathing slowed. Shoulders released. The body no longer leaned forward, waiting to succeed or fail at being silent. Silence, in this sense, did not belong to them. It did not need guarding. It did not depend on vows or agreements. It arose naturally when nothing was being defended and nothing was being performed. The teacher looked around the room, meeting each face briefly, without emphasis. When silence is real, he said, it does not feel special. It feels ordinary, wide, unclaimed. The students noticed that no one felt the urge to speak now, not because they were restraining themselves, but because there was nothing to say. The room held them gently, without demand. This silence did not ask for recognition. It did not produce a sense of achievement. It simply remained, doing nothing, needing nothing. And in that doing nothing, it revealed what the earlier quiet could not. That peace does not come from control. It comes from release. The teacher did not ask the students to maintain the silence they were experiencing. He did not suggest holding on to it or repeating it later.
He knew that the moment someone tries to keep silence, it has already changed. Tin lang, he said softly. Kong pai la dieu de l'âme. It is what remains when effort ends. The students felt this truth settle into the body. There was no instruction to follow, no technique to remember. The silence they were in did not feel earned. It felt uncaused. Thoughts still appeared from time to time, but they no longer demanded response. Sensations rose and fell without commentary. The mind did not need to manage any of it. This kind of stillness was not fragile. It did not depend on conditions being perfect. It did not rely on rules, vows, or discipline in that moment. It was present because nothing was interfering. The teacher explained that when silence is allowed, rather than produced, it moves with life. It remains during sound. It remains during movement. It is not broken by word, because it was never built on their absence. The students understood now why their vow had fallen apart so quickly. It was not because silence was difficult. It was because they were trying to be silent, rather than letting silence be. When the need to appear quiet dissolves, quietness remains. When the need to succeed disappears, ease returns. Nothing special has to happen. The teacher looked around the room once more. Faces were relaxed. No one was waiting for the next instruction. No one felt behind. "This," he said, "is enough." And he fell silent again. Not as a practice, but as a continuation of what was already there. As this story gently comes to rest, there is nothing to hold, nothing to improve. Let the quiet remain unclaimed and allow the next story to arrive on its own. There once lived a local lord who was known throughout the region for his power and influence. His lands were prosperous, his authority unquestioned, and his word carried immediate consequence. People bowed deeply when he passed. Decisions were made quickly in his presence. Nothing seemed to resist his will. And yet, despite all of this, the Lord felt a persistent unease. He had invited many teachers to his estate over the years. Scholars, priests, advisors, each offering explanations and praise. They spoke carefully, choosing words that would please him. They confirmed his intelligence, his virtue, his importance. Their visits ended politely, and nothing inside him changed. One day, he heard of two Zen teachers traveling through the area. One was said to be gentle and agreeable, skilled with words, well liked by those in power. The other was rumored to be blunt, even rude at times, uninterested in rank or approval. Curious, the Lord invited both to visit him, one after the other. The first teacher arrived and was welcomed warmly. He spoke with elegance, praising the Lord's wisdom and governance. He compared the Lord's leadership to ancient sages and assured him that his path was already aligned with the way. The Lord listened with satisfaction. The words felt pleasant, familiar, and affirming. When the visit ended, the Lord felt calm for a moment. But as the teacher departed, the old unease quietly returned. Later, the second teacher arrived. There was no ceremony. He did not bow deeply. He did not offer compliments. When the Lord asked him about the way, the teacher looked around the room, then back at the Lord, and spoke plainly. "You are a fool," he said. The words landed without decoration. No explanation followed. No apology softened their edge. The room grew tense. Attendants stiffened, waiting for anger. The Lord felt heat rise in his chest. His authority had been challenged openly, without fear. And yet, beneath the surge of offense, something else stirred. The words did not flatter him. They did not protect his image. They did not give him anything to hold on to. They left him exposed. The Lord did not respond right away. For the first time in many years, someone had spoken to him without trying to manage the outcome. And in that unprotected moment, the question he had been avoiding began to surface, not about power or status, but about truth. The Lord dismissed his attendants and remained alone with the second teacher. The room felt larger now, emptier, as if the words spoken moments earlier had cleared something from the air. The sting of the insult still lingered, but beneath it was a quieter curiosity that refused to fade. He thought of the first teacher again. The elegance of his speech, the careful praise, the way each sentence had wrapped around the Lord's identity, reinforcing what he already believed about himself. Those words had felt good, like warm clothing. But they had not stayed. They had slipped away as soon as the speaker left. The second teacher had offered nothing of the sort.
No reassurance, no approval, no protection. The Lord realized that the discomfort he felt now was different from anger. It was closer to exposure. The insult had not attacked his position. It had bypassed it entirely. "Why?" the Lord asked slowly. "Did you speak to me that way?" The teacher did not raise his voice.
He did not soften it either, because you asked about the way. He said, "And praise would have kept you asleep." The words settled without force. The Lord saw then how often he had surrounded himself with voices that confirmed him, how rarely he had allowed words that challenged him to land. Praise had become a kind of armor, comfortable and heavy, dulling the edge of inquiry. "Loik hen," the teacher continued. "Nuoi lon hin an." "Loi that," he added. "Lam tan hin an." The Lord felt the difference clearly. One fed the self he showed to the world. The other touched something he had never learned to defend. He lowered his gaze, not in submission, but in recognition.
The teacher had not come to insult him. He had come to remove a veil, and in doing so, he had offered something far more valuable than comfort. The room grew quiet again. The Lord noticed his breathing slow. The need to respond, to justify, to restore his dignity had softened. What remained was a simple openness.
Unfamiliar but steady. For the first time, he understood that the words he resisted most were often the ones closest to truth. The Lord sat quietly, letting the discomfort settle without pushing it away. He began to see how rare this moment was. Power had always given him options he could dismiss, reward, punish, or ignore. Truth, however, did not respond to authority. It appeared only when allowed. He looked at the teacher again, not as a subject addressing a ruler, but as a human being speaking to another. The absence of fear in the teacher's posture was unmistakable. Nothing was being sought. Nothing was being avoided.
"I could have had you removed," the Lord said, calmly. The teacher nodded. "Yes." There was no challenge in the reply. No bravado, a just acknowledgement. "And yet you chose to speak plainly." The Lord continued. "Yes," the teacher said again, "because you asked." The simplicity of the exchange revealed something the Lord had never considered.
Those who depend on favor cannot afford honesty. Those who seek approval shape their words to survive. Over time, the Lord had learned to trust the voices that stayed. He had not learned to trust the voices that risked leaving. He saw now that choosing truth required choosing a certain kind of relationship, one not built on comfort, but on clarity. One that might wound pride, but would not deceive. The Lord reflected on his advisors, his teachers, the people he kept closest. How many of them were free to speak honestly? How many were protecting themselves? How many were protecting him from himself? He felt no urge to condemn them. The system he lived in had shaped all of them equally, but he recognized the cost. "I want to learn," he said at last, "from someone who will not spare me." The teacher inclined his head slightly. There was no satisfaction in the gesture, only readiness. In choosing a voice that would not flatter him, the Lord sensed a shift. Authority had not been weakened. It had been redirected away from control toward listening. And in that redirection, the path ahead felt quieter, less crowded, and more real. The teacher did not soften after being chosen. He did not change his tone to reassure the Lord or to ease the tension that still hovered quietly in the room. What he offered was not gentleness in words, but steadiness in presence. Compassion, he said, is often misunderstood. The Lord listened without interrupting. He could feel how easily compassion had been confused with comfort in his own life. He had rewarded those who made things easier. He had dismissed those who made things clearer. To protect someone from discomfort, the teacher continued, is not always to care for them. His voice remained even, unhurried. Sometimes it is to protect an image. Sometimes it is to delay awakening. The Lord thought of the many times advisors had chosen silence rather than risk displeasure. How kindness had been used as a reason to avoid honesty. How care had been measured by smooth outcomes rather than by truth. Tin Thuong, that, the teacher said, does not seek to be liked. It seeks to be useful in the deepest sense. It is willing to let misunderstanding arise. It is willing to let tension appear. It does not abandon clarity for harmony. The words landed slowly. The Lord felt them settle beneath the surface of pride and habit. He saw how indulgence could wear the mask of kindness, how flattery could be mistaken for loyalty, how avoiding conflict could be praised as peace. The teacher did not frame this as a rule. He framed it as a responsibility. When one sees clearly, one must decide whether to speak from care or from fear. Both can sound polite. Only one serves truth. The Lord noticed a quiet relief. The need to be protected from difficult words eased. He did not feel attacked. He felt respected in a way he had not known before. This kind of compassion did not lift him up. It stood him upright. He realized then that the teacher's bluntness had not been an act of cruelty. It had been an act of trust that the Lord could bear the truth without collapsing into defense. In that recognition, the room felt lighter. Not because the words were easy, but because they were honest. And honesty, when received without resistance, carries a gentleness of its own. The Lord sat with the teacher long after the conversation had slowed. No more words were needed. What remained was a question that did not press for an answer, yet would not leave him alone. It was not about governance or wisdom. It was simpler and more difficult. Who all these years had been feeding his sense of self? He saw it clearly now. Praise had not merely pleased him. It had sustained an image he had learned to protect. Each compliment added a layer. Each agreement made that layer feel more solid. And slowly, without noticing, he had come to depend on those who reinforced it. The teacher had done the opposite. He had offered nothing to hold, no role to maintain, no image to defend. And in that absence, the Lord felt strangely free. Exposed, yes, but lighter. The question turned inward. It was no longer about which teacher was correct. It was about which voices he chose to keep near. Who was invited to speak? Who was rewarded? Who was silenced, politely or otherwise? He realized that the ego does not survive on cruelty alone. It survives on nourishment. It grows on approval, agreement, and the subtle reassurance that nothing needs to change. Those who provide this nourishment may appear kind. Those who refuse it may appear harsh. But appearance, he saw, was not the measure. The Lord bowed to the teacher, not as a ruler acknowledging a subject, but as one human recognizing another who had not colluded with illusion. He understood now that the teacher's bluntness had not taken anything from him. It had removed something unnecessary. From that day on, the Lord listened differently. He noticed which words tightened him and which ones steadied him. He paid attention to who left him comfortable and who left him awake. The path ahead did not promise ease. It promised honesty. And for the first time, that felt like enough. As this story settles, there is no one to impress, no image to maintain. Let the need for approval soften and allow the night to continue. Ryokan lived quietly at the edge of a village, in a small hut that held little more than a mat, a brush, and the steady rhythm of his days. He was known for his simplicity,
For verses written without ambition. For a way of being that did not ask the world to be different. People came and went, leaving offerings, seeking counsel, or simply sitting with him in silence. One afternoon, a visitor arrived with hesitation in his steps. He was Ryokan's nephew, a young man whose life had begun to unravel.
Debts had accumulated, choices had narrowed, habits had taken root where intention once lived. He stood at the doorway, unsure whether to enter, unsure what could be said that had not already been said many times before. Ryokan welcomed him without comment. There was no inspection, no question, no concern expressed on his face. He prepared tea slowly, the sound of water and cups filling the small space. They sat together as the afternoon light shifted, neither rushing to speak. The nephew began to explain himself. Words came in fragments, apologies, justifications, plans that had failed, promises that felt thin even as they were spoken. He waited for correction, for advice, for disappointment. Ryokan listened. He did not interrupt. He did not nod in agreement. He did not offer instruction. When the nephew finished, the room returned to quiet. Outside, a breeze moved through the grass. Inside, nothing pressed for resolution. The young man felt the familiar urge to fill the space, to add something more convincing. But Ryokan remained still. At last, Ryokan stood and walked toward the door. He did not signal for the nephew to follow. He simply stepped outside, as if continuing an ordinary task. The nephew rose and followed without thinking. Ryokan stopped, looked down, and knelt. He reached for the strap of the nephew's sandal, which had come loose during the walk. Carefully, without a word, he tied it. The knot was simple, secure, unremarkable. Ryokan stood again and continued walking. The nephew remained where he was, the quiet act settling into him more deeply than any lecture ever had. Ryokan did not turn back to look at his nephew. He simply continued walking, as though nothing unusual had happened, as though the moment they had just shared required no acknowledgement at all. There was no correction in his posture, no signal that a lesson was being delivered, no pause inviting explanation or response. The path stretched quietly ahead of them. The nephew followed, unsettled in a way he could not immediately explain. He had arrived prepared to be corrected, to be warned, or perhaps to be disappointed once more. He had rehearsed defenses in his mind, reasons for his failures, promises he was ready to make again. Yet none of those things were being asked of him. Ryokan did not question his choices. He did not mention the debts, the wasted days, or the concern of the family. He did not suggest what should be done next. The silence was not heavy. It was spacious. In that space, the nephew felt something unfamiliar begin to surface. Without blame, there was nothing to resist. Without instruction, there was nothing to argue against. Without judgment, the usual tension that kept him moving in circles had nowhere to hold. He noticed how often his life had been shaped by reacting to criticism, reacting to advice, reacting even to kindness that carried expectation. Here, there was no pressure to become better, and strangely, that absence made him see more clearly. Ryokan walked with the same unhurried rhythm he always had. His steps did not adjust to the presence behind him. He was not guiding, he was simply being. And in that quiet companionship, something softened. The nephew became aware that change was already forming, not as a decision, not as resolve, but as a gentle recognition. He did not want to continue living in a way that required constant explanation. He did not want to keep tightening knots that would only loosen again. No words were needed to point this out. Ryokan's silence did not abandon him. It held him. Without being taught, something was understood. Without being blamed, something was released. They continued walking, and the afternoon remained exactly as it was ordinary, unremarkable, and quietly complete. Ryokan left early the next morning. There was no ceremony to mark his departure. No final advice, no reminder of why he had come. He gathered his few belongings, adjusted his robe, and stepped back onto the path as quietly as he had arrived. The house behind him remained still, holding the faint trace of incense and night air. The nephew watched him go. He did not follow. He did not call out. Something told him that nothing more needed to be said. As the figure of the old monk slowly disappeared along the road, the world seemed unchanged. The same walls, the same courtyard, the same familiar sounds of the town waking into another day. And yet, within him, there was a subtle difference so slight it might have been missed if he had been looking for something dramatic. He felt no sudden burst of resolve, no vow, no surge of inspiration. Instead, there was a quiet settling. Later that day, the nephew found himself moving differently. He paused before speaking. He noticed small things he had ignored before the weight of his own steps. The carelessness in how he reached for objects, the way his thoughts often rushed ahead of his actions. Nothing compelled him to change. Nothing demanded improvement. And precisely because of that, he began to choose more carefully. He untangled small matters first. He attended to what was nearest. He stopped postponing what could be done simply. When temptation arose, it felt thinner somehow, less convincing. Not because it had been condemned, but because something truer had been touched, quietly, without explanation. The memory of Ryokan's presence returned not as an image, but as a feeling, a steadiness that did not argue, did not persuade, and did not insist. No one praised him. No one noticed immediately, and that was enough. Change unfolded the way dawn does, without announcement, without effort, and without needing to be believed in. It did not come from fear of consequence or hope of reward. It came from alignment, from no longer wishing to live out of step with what had been seen. Ryokan never returned to check on him. There was no need. The teaching had already done its work, not through words and not through correction, but through a single moment of unguarded presence that continued to echo long after the path had emptied. And life went on, simpler than before. Nothing outward marked the change. Days passed, and the world continued in its ordinary rhythm. People spoke, work was done, evenings arrived as they always had. From the outside, there was no sign that anything meaningful had occurred. And yet, something quiet had taken root. The nephew no longer searched for instruction. He did not wait to be told what was right or wrong. He simply noticed where he stood and how he moved. In small moments, he felt the difference between acting from habit and acting from presence. When he reached for something, he reached with care. When he spoke, he heard his own voice before it finished leaving his mouth. When restlessness arose, he did not rush to escape it. Nothing was forced. Ryokan's teaching did not remain as a memory of words or gestures. It lived on as a way of being, a steadiness that required no reminder, a gentleness that did not depend on circumstances. The presence he had witnessed continued to shape him, not as an example to imitate, but as a quiet permission to be fully here. He began to understand, without thinking it through. The teaching does not always arrive as guidance. Sometimes it arrives as space. Sometimes it arrives as silence. Sometimes it arrives as a single moment of care, offered without intention to change anything at all. No one needed to be corrected. Nothing needed to be explained. Presence itself was enough. And in that realization, effort softened. The need to improve dissolved. Life became something to attend to, not something to fix. Each step carried its own balance. Each moment, its own completeness. There was nothing to achieve, nothing to carry, only this, and as the night settled in. That understanding did not ask to be remembered. It did not need to be held on to, like a breath easing out on its own. It simply allowed the body and mind to rest. The teaching was already finished, and as this story comes to a close, nothing needs to follow. You can let it fade, just as the night deepens on its own. A young student once came to the temple with a heavy heart. He had traveled far, not because he sought wisdom in books, but because something within him felt impossible to manage. Again and again, anger rose without warning. It arrived suddenly, like a storm breaking open a clear sky, leaving regret behind once it had passed. He bowed before the master and waited. When he finally spoke, his voice carried both urgency and exhaustion. He explained how quickly his temper appeared, how it seized his words and actions before he could stop them, how afterward he felt ashamed and confused. He had tried to control it. He had promised himself many times that it would be different. Yet the same fire kept returning. "I have an ungovernable temper," he said quietly. "It causes harm to others and suffering to myself. Please tell me how to cure it." The courtyard was still. Leaves shifted slightly in the afternoon air. The master listened without interruption, without nodding, without reacting. His presence did not hurry the story along, nor did it lean away from it. The student stood there, exposed by his own honesty. He expected instruction. He expected a method, perhaps a discipline to practice, or a rule to follow. But nothing came immediately. The master looked at him for a long moment, not as someone diagnosing a problem, but as someone observing what was already present. The student felt his own breathing become louder in the silence. The anger he had described was not there now. Only the memory of it remained, hovering like smoke after a fire. He wondered whether he had spoken incorrectly, whether he had exaggerated, whether the master had already judged him. The air remained calm. In that stillness, something subtle began to appear, not an answer, but a space around the question itself. The student noticed that, in this moment, the temper he feared was nowhere to be found. It had no shape, no weight, no place to stand, and yet he was certain it would return. The master finally shifted, as though about to speak, not to offer a solution, but to look more closely at what the student believed he carried with him. Bankei did not offer advice. He did not explain the nature of anger, nor did he speak about patience or discipline. Instead, he looked at the student with quiet curiosity, as though something about the story required closer inspection. "You say you have an ungovernable temper," the master said at last. "Show it to me." The student was startled. He hesitated, unsure whether he had heard correctly. The request felt strange, almost childlike. He searched inside himself, waiting for the familiar heat to rise, for the tightness in the chest, the rush of thoughts, the urge to defend or strike back, but nothing appeared. "Right now, I cannot show it," the student replied. "It comes suddenly. I never know when." Bankei nodded slightly, as if this confirmed something rather than contradicting it. "When it comes," he asked gently. "Where does it come from?" The student opened his mouth, then closed it again. He had never considered this question. Anger, to him, had always felt immediate and personal, something that simply took over. He had assumed it was part of who he was, as natural and fixed as his own face. "It just appears," he said finally. "I don't choose it. And when it does not appear," Bankei continued, "where is it then?" The silence deepened. The student felt his certainty begin to loosen. If his temper were truly his own, truly something he possessed, should it not be available at any moment, he could raise his hand whenever asked. He could speak his name without effort. But this thing he feared most, this anger, came and went without permission. Bankei leaned forward slightly. "If it were truly yours," he said, "you could show it to me at will. But you cannot." "So how can it be your true nature?" The words did not strike the student like a revelation. They landed more softly than that, like a question left open. For the first time, he sensed a gap between himself and the anger he had been fighting for so long. A small distance, barely noticeable, yet unmistakably there. The temper that had defined him moments earlier now seemed oddly absent, like a visitor who had stepped outside without warning. Bankei said nothing more. He did not press the point. He did not explain further. He simply allowed the question to remain, hanging gently in the air, doing its quiet work. The student stood quietly after Bankei's words. Nothing dramatic happened. No insight arrived in a flash. No certainty replaced the confusion. Yet something subtle had shifted. He noticed that the anger he feared was not present now. In this moment, there was only listening, only breathing, only the sound of the wind passing through the trees of the courtyard. The body was calm. The mind was alert, but not tense. He began to sense that what he had called my temper was not a constant thing. It did not stay. It did not belong in the way he had believed. It appeared, lingered briefly, and disappeared again, leaving him behind to deal with what remained. For a long time, He had lived as though anger were his identity, as though it defined the edges of who he was. But standing there, he could not find it. He could not point to it. He could not say, "This is me." Bankei did not name this realization. He did not frame it as understanding. He simply remained present. The student felt a growing space open within him. A small gap at first, like a pause between breaths. In that pause, there was room to see that anger was something that happened, not something he was. It arose, it passed, and something else remained quiet, steady, unchanged. He did not try to hold on to this insight. He did not try to make it permanent. He only noticed it. In that noticing, the struggle softened. The need to defeat anger loosened its grip. If it was not truly him, then it did not need to be destroyed. It only needed to be seen when it appeared, and allowed to leave when it was ready. Bankei's presence offered no promise that anger would never return. But it revealed something more important. Whatever came and went could not be the student's true nature. And in that simple recognition, a different kind of freedom began to take shape, quietly, without effort, without resistance. As time passed, the student began to notice anger in a different way. It still appeared, it still rose unexpectedly, but now, when it came, it did not arrive alone. There was awareness with it. He felt the tightening in the chest, the heat in the face, the quickening of thought, but alongside these sensations was something steady, something that did not move with them. He could feel the mood without being pulled completely inside it. Before, anger had been immediate, total. It filled the whole space of his experience, leaving no room to stand apart. Now, there was a pause, a small opening, like a gap between clouds where the sky briefly shows through. In that opening, he saw that moods behaved like weather. They formed, they intensified, they passed. No mood stayed forever. No feeling asked for permission before arriving, and none stayed once its conditions changed. Even the strongest emotions depended on countless causes, words spoken, memories stirred, expectations unmet. When those conditions shifted, the mood shifted with them. Bankei did not say, "Control your anger." He did not say, "Get rid of it." He had shown something simpler. You do not need to become what passes through you. The student realized that identification had been the true source of his suffering. The moment he said, "This is me," the mood became solid, heavy, personal, but when he allowed the feeling to be just what it was, a temporary movement, it lost its authority. Anger could shout, but it could not command. He began to let moods move through him without commentary, without naming them as good or bad, without rushing to justify or suppress them. Sometimes the anger burned briefly, then faded. Sometimes it lingered longer, but it no longer defined the whole of his being. Nothing was pushed away. Nothing was held on to. And in that non-identification, effort dissolved. There was no longer a battle to win, no inner enemy to defeat. Only the simple act of staying present as each mood arose and fell away, like waves breaking on a shore that remained unmoved beneath them. Bankei's teaching lived on not as instruction, but as permission to remain as awareness itself, untouched by what came and went. With time, the student stopped watching anger so closely, not because it had vanished, but because it no longer held the center. What mattered more was the quiet space that surrounded it, the stillness that remained before anger arose, and the same stillness that returned after it passed. He began to trust that space. When anger appeared, it was no longer an emergency. It did not require immediate action or explanation. It could be felt fully without being obeyed. And when it faded, nothing needed to replace it. The calm that followed felt natural, familiar, as though it had always been there. Freedom did not come from fixing anything. It came from not being owned by what appeared. The student saw that this space was not created by effort. It did not depend on discipline or control. It was simply noticed, always present, quietly available beneath every mood, every thought, every reaction.
In that space, there was room to breathe, room to pause, room to choose. Sometimes the old patterns returned. Sometimes anger rose quickly and strongly, but even then, something remained untouched. A steady awareness that did not tighten, did not burn, did not argue. Benkei never promised a life without emotion.
He revealed something more honest. Freedom is not the absence of feeling. It is the absence of identification. And in that understanding, the student rested more easily within himself. Life no longer felt like a series of reactions to be managed. It became a flow of moments, each one arriving and departing on its own. Nothing needed to be controlled. Nothing needed to be resisted. The space was enough. And as this story settles, you do not need to hold on to anything. What comes can pass. What remains is already at rest. 4 monks were traveling together through the countryside. They had studied for many years,
Reading texts, memorizing teachings, and sharpening their understanding through long discussions. Wherever they stopped, conversation followed. Questions unfolded into arguments. Arguments unfolded into finer distinctions. Each believed he was moving closer to truth by thinking more clearly about it. One afternoon, they arrived at a small temple set back from the road. The air was cool, and the ground was shaded by tall trees. They asked permission to rest and to light a small fire to warm themselves before continuing on their way. The master of the temple welcomed them without ceremony. As the fire crackled softly, the monks resumed their debate. Their voices rose and fell, animated but controlled. They spoke of mind and world, of whether things existed independently or only as appearances within awareness. One argued that all phenomena were created by mind alone. Another insisted that objects must exist outside of perception. Otherwise, nothing could be shared. Each position was defended with careful logic. The discussion grew increasingly refined. Words became precise. Concepts became subtle. And yet, the debate never settled. The master listened quietly from nearby. He did not interrupt. He did not correct. He simply observed the rhythm of voices circling the same questions, turning them over again and again, as though the right arrangement of ideas might finally unlock certainty. At some point, the fire burned lower. The light shifted. The forest sounds returned to the foreground as the monks paused, each waiting for the next response. The master stepped closer. He did not comment on their arguments. He did not ask them to stop. Instead, he gestured calmly toward a large stone resting near the temple path. It sat there plainly, unchanged, neither impressive nor hidden. "There is a stone over there," he said. The monks turned their heads, curious but attentive. The master's voice remained even. "Tell me," he asked gently, "is that stone inside your mind or outside of it?" The question did not sound like philosophy. It sounded simple. And in that simplicity, the debate they had been carrying began to loosen, even before anyone attempted to answer. The monks looked again at the stone. It rested where it had always rested, solid and unremarkable,
catching a thin line of afternoon light along its surface. No symbol, no decoration, just a stone. The question lingered. "Is it inside your mind?" the master asked, "or outside of it?" One of the monks spoke first. He had spent years studying the nature of perception and felt confident in his understanding. From the Buddhist view, he said carefully, "All things arise within mind. What we experience is shaped by awareness itself. So the stone must be inside the mind." Another monk frowned slightly, considering this. "But if the stone exists only in mind," he replied, "how can we all see the same stone? How can we point to it together? Surely it must exist outside as well." A third monk added his own refinement. He spoke of interdependence, of subject and object arising together, of neither inside nor outside being fully correct. The words flowed smoothly, supported by texts and teachings learned long ago. The master listened. He did not nod. He did not disagree. He simply waited as each monk took his turn, building careful explanations around the stone, lifting it into thought, shaping it into concept, turning it again and again in language. As they spoke, the stone itself remained unchanged. It did not move closer. It did not move farther away. The fire crackled softly behind them. A bird called once from the trees. The world continued, unconcerned with their conclusions. When the last monk finished speaking, the group fell quiet. Each felt that something important had been said, yet something still felt unresolved. The answers sounded complete, but they did not settle the question. They hovered, suspended in thought. The master looked again at the stone. Then he looked at the monks. There was no trace of argument in his face, no challenge, no impatience, only a simple curiosity, as though he were noticing something obvious that had been overlooked. The stone had not asked to be explained. It had not asked to be placed inside or outside anything. It was simply there. The master drew a breath, preparing to speak again, not to refine the debate, but to bring it to rest. The master looked at the monk who had spoken last. His voice did not rise. It did not carry correction. It was almost casual. "If the stone is inside your mind," he said softly, "your head must feel very heavy." For a moment, no one responded. The words were simple, almost playful, yet they landed with a quiet finality that the long debate had not reached. The monks felt something shift not in their arguments, but in the space around them. They glanced again at the stone. It had not changed. It had not become clearer or more mysterious. It was simply resting there, unmoved by every explanation placed upon it. One of the monks smiled faintly, then fell silent. Another lowered his gaze. The ideas they had been carrying so carefully began to loosen, as though set down gently after a long walk. The master said nothing more. He did not explain what he meant. He did not replace one concept with another. He allowed the remark to do what it came to do, nothing more. In that quiet, the monks noticed something they had overlooked. While they had been discussing where the stone existed, they had not been seeing it. While they had been deciding what it was, they had not been present with it. Their minds felt lighter already, not because the question had been answered, but because the need to answer it had softened. The debate did not collapse in embarrassment. It simply dissolved, like mist when the sun rises without effort. The stone remained. The fire continued to burn, and The air moved through the trees, and for the first time since they had arrived, no one felt the need to add anything. The monks remained quiet for a while after the master's words. They noticed how quickly the mind reaches for explanation, how easily it turns what is present into an idea about what is present. The debate they had carried was not wrong, but it had drifted away from what it was pointing to. Thought had become the destination. They began to sense the difference between the map and the land itself. The map could be drawn with great care, full of symbols and lines and labels. It could be accurate, useful, even beautiful. But no matter how refined it became, it was never the ground beneath their feet. The stone did not exist inside the argument. It did not exist inside the explanation. It existed here. They saw how concepts had quietly replaced experience, how words had stepped in front of seeing. The question of inside or outside had become heavier than the simple act of noticing what was there. The master did not reject thought. He did not dismiss learning. He only pointed to where confusion begins when the description is mistaken for the thing itself. As the monks sat with this, something eased. The mind relaxed its grip on needing to resolve everything. The stone no longer asked to be understood. It only asked to be seen. They noticed its cool surface, its weight, its shape against the earth. No philosophy was required for that. In that moment, the world felt closer, not smaller, not larger, just immediate, unfiltered by conclusions, unburdened by explanation. The master stood quietly with them, allowing the space to remain open. He offered no summary, no closing statement. He trusted that the shift had already occurred. And in that trust, the monks felt the simplicity they had been searching for, not in thought, but in direct contact with what was already present. The monks did not return to their debate. They sat quietly, letting the moment settle without trying to hold it. The stone remained where it was, ordinary and complete. The fire gave off a steady warmth. The air moved through the trees without instruction. Nothing needed to be resolved. One by one, the monks noticed how simple it was to be here without explanation. The body already knew how to stand on the ground. The eyes already knew how to see. Sound arrived on its own, without being named. Experience did not require permission from thought. They felt how light the mind could be when it was not carrying conclusions. The master did not ask them to abandon thinking forever. He did not warn against study or philosophy. He simply allowed them to rest where thought naturally falls quiet when it has nothing more to add. Direct experience did not argue. It did not persuade. It simply was. The monks sensed that much of their effort had been spent circling ideas, hoping clarity would appear at the end of explanation. But clarity, they saw now, was already present, waiting beneath the movement of thought. The stone did not need to be placed inside or outside the mind. The question itself had dissolved. What remained was contact, immediate, uncomplicated. The feeling of being here without standing apart from what was here. They stood up slowly, preparing to continue their journey. No one spoke about what had happened. There was nothing to report, nothing to defend, nothing to remember in words. As they walked away from the temple, the forest path opened ahead of them, solid beneath their feet. Each step landed naturally, without analysis. The world felt closer, not because it had changed, but because they were no longer standing at a distance from it. The master remained behind, watching them go. He did not follow. He did not call out.
He trusted the simplicity of what had been seen. And as the night approached, the teaching rested where it belonged, not in the head, not in language, but in the quiet ease of direct experience, unfolding moment by moment. As this story comes to rest, there is nothing to figure out. You can let the mind be light and allow the night to deepen on its own.
A merchant once lived in a busy town near the river. His days were filled with counting, planning, and careful attention to gain and loss. Goods came and went. Coins passed through his hands. Agreements were made and broken. From the outside, his life appeared successful and secure. And yet, his mind was rarely at rest. Even in moments of quiet, worry followed him. When business went well, he feared it would not last. When it slowed, he feared decline. At night, as the town settled and the lamps dimmed, his thoughts continued to move, measuring tomorrow against yesterday. He had wealth, but not ease.
One evening, after closing his shop, he heard of a Zen teacher staying nearby. The teacher was known for his simplicity and for speaking little. Some said people felt lighter after sitting with him, though nothing specific was ever explained. Curious, and more than a little tired of his own thoughts, the merchant decided to visit.
He arrived carrying no offerings, only his concern. They sat together without hurry. The teacher did not ask about his business. He did not inquire about profit or plans. He simply poured tea and waited. The sound of the cup touching the floor echoed briefly in the small room. The merchant began to speak. He described his success, then quickly moved to his fear of losing it. He spoke of competition, of changing markets, of how easily fortune could turn. His words flowed steadily, as though rehearsed many times in his own mind. "I have worked hard," he said at last. "I have built something valuable, but I cannot rest. I am always afraid it will slip away." The teacher listened, eyes calm, posture unchanged. The merchant paused, noticing the silence that followed his confession. He expected reassurance, perhaps advice on how to protect what he had gained. Instead, there was only stillness. In that stillness, the merchant felt the weight of his concern more clearly. It was not tied to any single problem. It was constant, woven into every moment, regardless of circumstances. The teacher finally looked up, as though preparing to speak, not to solve the merchant's situation, but to look gently at what the merchant believed he was holding. The teacher did not respond to the merchant's worries right away. He poured more tea. Steam rose briefly, then vanished. The simple movement seemed to carry its own rhythm. Untroubled by profit or loss, the merchant watched, waiting, feeling the familiar urge to fill the silence with more explanation. Instead, the teacher spoke only one sentence: "You will die." The words were not sharp. They were not dramatic. They arrived as plainly as the sound of the cup returning to the floor. The merchant felt his body tighten. His thoughts stopped for a moment, as though the ground beneath them had shifted. He had come to speak about business, about security, about how to protect what he had built. He had not come to speak about this. "Yes," he said quickly, almost defensively. Everyone knows that. The teacher did not argue. He did not repeat himself. He simply looked at the merchant, as if waiting for the words to finish, settling. After a while, the merchant felt something soften. The sentence echoed quietly, not as a threat, but as a fact so ordinary it was usually avoided. He realized how rarely he allowed it into his thinking, how carefully he arranged his plans as though time were guaranteed. The teacher spoke again, gently. "When you remember this," he said, "what becomes of your worry?" The merchant looked inward. The fear he had described earlier, the constant guarding, the need to secure tomorrow, felt different now. Not gone, but thinner, less convincing. The idea of losing wealth seemed smaller when placed beside the certainty of losing everything eventually. He noticed how much of his anxiety had been fueled by pretending permanence, by acting as though accumulation could outrun change. The teacher had not criticized his work. He had not dismissed success. He had simply placed it within a larger frame. The room felt quiet again. The merchant did not feel afraid of death in that moment. He felt oddly relieved. The endless calculation loosened its grip. For the first time in a long while, his mind rested without needing reassurance. The teacher said no more. The sentence had done its work. The merchant sat quietly after the teacher's question. Nothing needed to be answered aloud. The room seemed to widen as the usual urgency lost its grip. He noticed how the river outside continued to move.
Indifferent to plans and calculations. Boats passed. Water flowed. The day did not pause to consider profit or loss. The teacher spoke again, softly. Everything follows its nature. He did not expand on the sentence. He allowed it to rest where it landed. The merchant felt the truth of it without effort.
Goods arrived and departed. Seasons shifted. Bodies aged. Even his careful strategies had always moved within patterns he did not control. Growth and decline were not personal failures or successes. They were movements within a larger order that no ledger could contain. He saw how much energy he had spent resisting this. How often he tried to secure what was, as if holding tightly could stop change from arriving. The worry had not protected him. It had only narrowed his days. When you work with the order of things, the teacher said, life feels lighter. When you work against it, life feels heavy. The merchant recognized the weight immediately. It was the weight of pretending stability where there was none, of measuring worth against outcomes that were always shifting, of believing that enough could be fixed in place. He did not feel urged to abandon his work. He felt invited to see it differently, to let effort exist without clinging to results, to allow gain and loss to come and go without turning them into identity. The river outside continued its sound. In that sound, the merchant sensed a quiet reassurance, not that things would go his way, but that they would go their way, and that this had always been true. Whether he worried or not, the teacher did not offer comfort in the form of promises. He offered alignment, a simple turning back toward how things already moved. The merchant's shoulders eased. His breath lengthened. The future felt less crowded with fear, not because it had become certain, but because certainty was no longer being demanded. And in that easing, he sensed a different kind of order, taking hold, one that did not need guarding, and did not ask him to stay awake at night. The merchant stayed a while longer, not asking for more answers. He felt the truth of impermanence settle, not as an idea to remember, but as a rhythm already moving through his life. Everything he had been trying to secure was already in motion. Success rose and fell. Bodies aged, markets shifted. Even worry itself appeared and disappeared without his permission. The teacher spoke quietly, as though naming something obvious. To dwell in impermanence, he said, is not to fear loss. It is to stop arguing with change. The merchant noticed how much of his tension had come from resistance. He had treated change as a threat rather than a condition. He had tightened his grip, hoping to delay what could not be delayed. And in doing so, he had missed the ease that comes from allowing things to pass naturally. Impermanence, seen clearly, did not feel harsh. It felt honest. When nothing is promised to remain, nothing needs to be defended so fiercely. The merchant sensed how this understanding softened his attachment, not by taking anything away, but by loosening the demand that things stay the same. He thought of his shop, his goods, his reputation. All of it still mattered, but it no longer needed to carry the weight of his peace. He could tend to his work carefully, without asking it to guarantee his future. The teacher did not tell him to let go of everything. He invited him to let go of pretending permanence. The merchant felt his breathing slow. The future, once crowded with anxious projections, opened into something quieter. Not empty, just less burdened by expectation. Impermanence did not ask him to withdraw from life. It asked him to meet life as it moved. In that meeting, effort felt cleaner. Action became simpler. He could respond to what arose without trying to freeze it in place. Loss would come. Gain would come. Neither needed to define him. The room felt calm, held by the understanding that nothing was wrong with things changing. Change was not a failure of control. It was the way life continued. And in accepting this, the merchant felt a surprising steadiness, one that did not depend on outcomes, and did not vanish when circumstances shifted. The merchant sat in the quiet for a long time. Nothing had been taken from him. His shop would still open, coins would still change hands, and agreements would still be made. And yet, something essential had shifted, not in his circumstances, but in where he placed his trust. The teacher spoke one last time, his voice low and steady. "There is a kind of wealth," he said, "that does not depend on keeping." The merchant felt the meaning of this without needing explanation. He saw how much of his anxiety had been tied to what could be lost: money, status, security, even time itself. Anything held that way demanded constant guarding. Anything guarded that closely became a source of fear. But what he was touching now felt different. It was the ability to be present with what was here, the capacity to meet gain and loss without collapsing, the ease that remained even when outcomes were uncertain. This wealth did not increase with success, and it did not diminish with failure. It did not require accumulation. It did not ask to be measured. It was available in the simple act of breathing, of seeing clearly, of allowing life to move without resistance. The merchant realized that he had been rich all along, but had been investing his attention elsewhere. He stood to leave. There was no promise made, no vow declared. He bowed, not in gratitude for advice, but in recognition of something remembered rather than learned. As he walked back toward the town, the river continued its steady flow. Shops would open. Bargains would be struck. Change would arrive, as it always had. And through it all, there was a quiet steadiness. He could return to one that could not be spent, stolen, or lost. The teacher remained seated, watching the light fade from the room. Nothing more was needed. As this story settles, there is nothing to secure. What truly supports you cannot be taken away. The master was very old. His body had grown thin, his movements slower than before. Yet his presence remained steady, unchanged by time. He lay resting in a small room, light entering softly through the open window. Outside, the world continued as it always had, footsteps passing, birds calling, the day unfolding without pause. Students gathered quietly nearby. They spoke in low voices, careful not to disturb him. Some had traveled far, sensing that the end was near. Others had been with him for many years and could not imagine the place without him. Each carried questions, though few were spoken aloud. The master opened his eyes. He did not look weak. He did not look troubled. His gaze was clear, unhurried, as if nothing important was happening. A student knelt beside him and asked gently, "Master, is there anything you would like to tell us?" The master did not answer right away. He seemed to listen not to the question, but to the room itself, to the sounds, to the quiet, to the simple fact of being here. Another student spoke, unable to hold back his concern. "What should we remember?" he asked. "What teaching should we carry forward?" The master smiled faintly. He had spent his life answering questions, yet now, at the edge of death, none of them seemed urgent. The future they worried about was not present here. Only this moment remained complete, undivided, asking for nothing. The master shifted slightly, as though to make himself more comfortable. His breath moved in and out without effort. There was no sign of clinging, no resistance to what was coming. The students waited, leaning forward, ready to receive final words of wisdom. The master looked at them with quiet affection, and then he spoke. The students leaned closer, their questions gathering quietly in the space between them and the master. They did not speak all at once. Each waited, listening to the breath of the others, feeling the weight of what was coming. The future pressed in gently, not as fear, but as uncertainty. What would remain when the master was gone? How would they continue without his presence? To return to one student asked about the temple. Another wondered who should guide them. A third asked how the teaching should be preserved, how it might be protected from misunderstanding or loss. Their voices were soft, respectful, sincere. The master listened without interruption. He did not turn away from their concern. He did not dismiss it. He allowed each question to arrive fully, to be heard, and to pass. As they spoke, the room filled with a familiar tension, the urge to secure what was slipping, to organize what felt fragile. The students were not afraid of death itself. They were afraid of what came after, of standing without direction, of being responsible for their own seeing. The master's eyes remained open, calm. He noticed how the questions moved outward, toward tomorrow, toward continuity, toward reassurance. He noticed how little attention was given to what was already complete here and now. A long pause followed. The students fell quiet again, realizing they had asked everything they could think to ask. The silence did not feel empty. It felt full, as if something was being allowed to ripen without being hurried. The master breathed in slowly. The future they were worried about was not present in the room. It existed only in thought. The body lying there did not resist the moment it was in. It did not plan its way forward. It rested. The master understood their questions. He had asked similar ones long ago. And yet, now, they felt unnecessary. He looked at the students with gentleness, as though seeing themselves in their concern. The wish to prepare was natural. The wish to hold on was human. But something simpler was waiting beneath it. The master shifted slightly, preparing to speak again, not to answer the questions they had asked, but to release them from the need to ask at all. The master listened until the last question faded. The room grew still again. No one moved. Even the air seemed to pause, as if waiting along with the students for something important to arrive. The master looked at them one by one. There was no urgency in his gaze, no sorrow, no sense of farewell, only calm. After a long moment, he spoke softly. "Don't ask any more." The words were quiet, almost casual, yet they settled deeply, like a stone sinking slowly into clear water. The students froze, unsure how to receive them. They had expected instruction,
Reassurance, perhaps a final teaching to carry forward. Instead, they were given an ending, simple, unadorned, complete. The master did not explain what he meant. He did not soften the sentence. He allowed it to stand as it was. In that moment, the questions lost their momentum. The need to prepare dissolved.
the future, which had felt so close just seconds earlier, receded gently, like a tide turning without announcement. The students began to understand not with their mind, but with their bodies. Asking had been a way of leaning forward, of reaching for certainty, of postponing rest. The master was not refusing them. He was releasing them. There was nothing more to secure, nothing more to resolve. The teaching they were looking for was not something that could be spoken or preserved. It was already present in the quiet room, in the sound of breathing, in the shared stillness that did not require direction. The master closed his eyes. Not in withdrawal, not in fatigue, but in ease. And the students remained there, no longer searching for answers, no longer trying to hold the moment in place. For the first time since arriving, they simply stayed. The words did not echo. They did not invite reflection. They simply ended the movement. The students remained seated, feeling the shift as something physical. The forward lean of the mind softened. The habit of reaching for guidance relaxed its grip. Nothing replaced it. And yet, nothing felt missing. Letting go did not arrive as a decision. It arrived as a quiet stopping. The master's breath moved evenly. His body rested without resistance, as though it had never learned to cling. Watching him, the students sensed that letting go was not something done at the end of life. It was something practiced moment by moment, so gently it often went unnoticed. The future no longer pressed against the room. The past no longer asked to be honored. Only this remained. One student noticed how his shoulders dropped. Another felt the tightness in his jaw ease. Someone else realized that the question he had been holding for years had quietly slipped away, without being answered. The master did not teach them how to let go. He showed them that letting go happens when nothing is being held. There was no instruction to follow, no method to remember. The simplicity of the moment did the work. They saw that wisdom was not something accumulated over time. It was what remained when accumulation stopped, when the mind no longer tried to carry the weight of meaning, responsibility, or continuity. The master opened his eyes once more, briefly, and looked around the room. His gaze did not linger. It did not settle anywhere. It touched everything equally and then moved on. He did not need to say goodbye. Letting go had already happened. The students understood then that the teaching would not end with his death, nor would it continue in the way they had imagined. It would appear whenever they stopped asking what to do next and allowed the present moment to be enough. The room felt complete. Nothing more could be added without disturbing it. Nothing followed the master's words. No conclusion appeared. No final understanding formed. The room rested as it was. The students remained seated, not waiting for what might come next. Time seemed to soften around them. Breathing found its own pace. The mind, no longer searching, settled into a quiet that did not need to be maintained. The master lay peacefully, his presence blending with the stillness of the room. There was no sense of departure yet, and no sense of arrival. Only this complete, unhurried enough. Resting in the present did not feel like an action. It felt like the absence of effort. Thoughts arose occasionally, then drifted away on their own. Sensations came and went without commentary. Nothing asked to be held. Nothing asked to be remembered. The students sensed that this was what the master had been pointing to all along, not a teaching to follow, but a way of resting that required no instruction. When attention stopped leaning forward, the present revealed itself as already supportive. There was no urgency here, no task left undone. Even the idea of endings dissolved. The master's breath remained steady. The room held its quiet. Outside, night continued its gentle unfolding, indifferent to names and moments, offering rest without condition. One by one, the students felt themselves sink into the simplicity of being here, not as individuals carrying meaning, but as part of the same stillness that filled the space between them. Nothing needed to be said, and in that nothing, there was ease. You do not need to follow this moment. You can let it be exactly as it is. There is nothing else to do now. There is nothing left to listen for. Nothing you need to remember. The night is already doing its work. Breath moves on its own, rising and falling, without effort. Thoughts can come or drift away. Both are fine. You do not need to follow this moment. You do not need to stay awake for it. Everything that needed to be said has already softened into silence. Let the body rest where it is. Let the mind become light. Let the dark carry you gently onward. Nothing more is required. These stories were never meant to give you something new. They were only meant to remind you of what has always been here. If this space feels gentle to you, you're welcome to return. You can subscribe and let these quiet nights continue whenever rest feels far away. For now, there's nothing else to do. Let the night hold you.